The bridge was collapsing. Through sheets of rain, Ethan Cole watched a luxury sedan tumble off the edge, its headlights spinning wildly as muddy water swallowed it whole. Inside, a woman's terrified face pressed against the glass, and in that split second, the single father made a choice that would change everything. He dove into the raging flood, not knowing the drowning stranger was Billionaire CEO Claire Donovan. Stay with me till the end, and drop a comment about where you're watching from. Let's see how far this story reaches. The rain had started 3 days ago. At first, it was nothing more than a steady drizzle, the kind that made people in Millbrook reach for their umbrellas with mild annoyance. But by Tuesday morning, the drizzle had turned into a downpour, and by Wednesday night, the downpour had become something else entirely, a monster that swallowed roads, uprooted 100-year-old oaks, and turned the peaceful Millbrook River into a beast nobody recognized. Ethan Cole stood at his kitchen window, watching the water creep up his driveway like a living thing. His 6-year-old daughter, Lily, pressed her small face against the glass beside him, her breath fogging up the window. "Daddy, is the water going to come inside?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan placed a protective hand on her shoulder, feeling the delicate bones beneath her pink pajamas. "No, sweetheart. We're on high ground. We're safe." But even as he said it, he wasn't sure. In his 34 years of life, 28 of them spent in Millbrook. He'd never seen anything like this. The local news had been broadcasting emergency warnings all day, telling people to evacuate low-lying areas to stay off the roads to wait for rescue if they were trapped. The governor had declared a state of emergency. The National Guard was supposedly on its way. "Why don't you go play in your room for a bit?" Ethan suggested, trying to keep his voice light. "Take Mr. Bunny with you." Lily clutched her stuffed rabbit tighter and looked up at him with those big brown eyes that reminded him so painfully of her mother. Sarah had been gone for 3 years now. Cancer took her when Lily was only 3, and moments like these when danger lurked and decisions had to be made. Ethan felt her absence like a physical ache. "You promise we're safe?" Lily asked. "I promise, baby girl." She nodded solemnly and padded off to her room. Mr. Bunny's ears dragging along the floor behind her. Ethan waited until he heard her door close before he grabbed his phone and tried calling his neighbor Jim Harrison for the 5th time. Straight to voicemail. The cell towers were probably overwhelmed or worse damaged. Through the rain-lashed window, he could barely make out the Harrison house 50 yards away. No lights. They'd probably evacuated, already gone to Jim's brother's place up in the hills like they'd talked about yesterday. Ethan had thought about leaving too, but Lily had been running a fever, and he hadn't wanted to take her out in this weather unless absolutely necessary. Now he was second-guessing that decision. A transformer exploded somewhere in the distance, lighting up the sky with an eerie blue flash. The lights in the house flickered once, twice, then died. The sudden darkness was absolute, broken only by the gray light filtering through the windows. "Daddy!" Lily's frightened voice called from her room. "It's okay, honey. Just the power. I'm getting the flashlights." Ethan fumbled his way to the hall closet where he kept the emergency supplies. His hands found the heavy-duty flashlight, clicked it on. The beam cut through the darkness, providing immediate relief. He grabbed 2 more flashlights and the battery-powered radio, then made his way to Lily's room. She was sitting on her bed, Mr. Bunny clutched to her chest, tears streaming down her face. The sight broke his heart. Hey, it's okay," he said, sitting beside her and pulling her into his arms. "It's just like camping, remember? When we went to Lake Harrison last summer." "But Mommy was there," she whispered into his chest. The words hit him like a punch. "I know, baby. I know." They sat like that for a moment, father and daughter holding each other in the darkness, while the storm raged outside. Then the radio crackled to life. Emergency evacuation orders for all residents along Millbrook River and Highway 42. The Riverside Bridge has been compromised. Repeat, the Riverside Bridge has been compromised. Emergency shelters have been set up at Millbrook High School and First Baptist Church. All residents in flood zones must evacuate immediately. The Riverside Bridge. That was only 2 miles from their house. If it was compromised, whatever that meant, the water would be redirecting, finding new paths, new victims. Ethan made a decision. "Lily, we're going on an adventure, okay? We're going to go to the high school where they have lights and food and lots of other people. In the rain. In the rain. But first, let's get you dressed in your warmest clothes." 20 minutes later, they were in Ethan's truck, slowly navigating through streets that looked nothing like the neighborhood he'd known his whole life. The water was everywhere, not flooding exactly, not yet, but flowing across the road in sheets, turning familiar intersections into foreign territory. The windshield wipers worked furiously but futilely against the downpour. Lily sat in her booster seat in the back, Mr. Bunny on her lap, singing softly to herself, a habit she'd developed to self-soothe. It was a song Sarah used to sing, something about sunshine and flowers. Ethan gripped the steering wheel tighter, focusing on the barely visible road ahead. They were making decent progress until they reached the intersection of Main and Riverside. What Ethan saw there made him slam on the brakes. The road ahead was gone, replaced by a raging river of muddy water. But that wasn't what made his blood run cold. It was the school bus, one of those short buses used for special needs kids, sitting half submerged in the water, tilted at a dangerous angle. He could see faces in the windows, children's faces. "Stay in the truck," Ethan commanded, already reaching for the door handle. "Daddy, no." "Lily, I need you to be brave, okay? Just like Mommy would want. Stay here, doors locked. I'll be right back." Before she could protest further, he was out in the storm. The rain hit him like 1,000 tiny fists, instantly soaking through his jacket. The wind tried to knock him over as he waded into the water, which was shockingly cold and stronger than he'd anticipated. It was up to his knees, then his thighs, the current trying to sweep his feet out from under him. The bus was maybe 30 feet away, but it felt like a mile. He could hear crying now, children's voices mixing with the storm. An adult face appeared in the emergency exit window, the driver a woman he recognized vaguely from school events. "Help us," she screamed. "The door won't open, the water." "How many?" Ethan shouted back, fighting to keep his balance. "6 kids and me, please." 7 people. How the hell was he going to get 7 people out of a bus in this current? But he didn't have time to plan. The bus shifted, tilting further, and the screams intensified. Ethan half swam, half waded to the emergency exit. The water was up to his chest now. "You have to kick it," he yelled. "Both feet right in the center." The driver disappeared from view, and a moment later he heard the thud of impact. Nothing. Another thud. On the third try, the door flew open and water immediately began rushing in. "One at a time," Ethan commanded, reaching up. Smallest first. What followed was the longest 10 minutes of his life. One by one, he pulled children from the bus, a boy with Down syndrome who couldn't have been older than 8 twin girls, who clung to each other even as he carried them, a teenager in a wheelchair who had to leave it behind. Each trip to safety and back was a battle against the current, his muscles screaming, his body temperature dropping dangerously. The driver came last, a woman named Mrs. Patterson, he remembered now. She was crying, thanking him over and over as he half-carried her to higher ground, where the children huddled together. "There's an emergency shelter at the high school," he told her, shouting to be heard over the storm. "Can you make it?" "My phone. I need to call their parents." "The towers are down. Just get them to safety. Go." He watched them stumble away into the darkness, then turned back to where he'd left his truck. His truck. Lily. The vehicle was still there, headlights cutting through the rain. He could see Lily's small face in the back window, and relief flooded through him. But as he started back, something else caught his eye. Further down what used to be Riverside Drive, where the road curved toward the bridge, a pair of headlights was moving erratically. No, not moving, being moved. A car was being swept along by the current, spinning slowly as the water carried it toward the collapsed section of bridge he could just make out in the distance. Ethan looked back at his truck, at his daughter's face. Every instinct screamed at him to get back to her, to drive away from this nightmare. But then the other car's headlights swung around and for just a moment illuminated the interior. There was someone inside, someone pounding on the windows. "Damn it!" Ethan cursed, already moving. This time he didn't fight the current. He used it, letting it carry him at an angle toward the spinning vehicle. It was a Mercedes, he noticed absurdly, probably worth more than he made in 3 years. The water was deeper here, much deeper. He couldn't touch bottom. The car hit something, a submerged tree maybe, and stopped spinning for a moment. That's when he saw her clearly for the first time. She was maybe 35, with dark hair plastered to her head and wide, terrified eyes. She was pounding on the driver's side window with something, a shoe, he realized. a high-heeled shoe. Her mouth was moving, screaming something he couldn't hear. The car lurched free of whatever had stopped it and continued its inexorable drift toward the collapsed bridge, toward certain death. Ethan swam harder than he'd ever swum in his life, fighting the current at an angle using every bit of strength he had left. His fingers finally found the door handle. Locked, of course. The woman saw him, and relief flickered across her face for an instant before being replaced by renewed panic. She was pointing down the water inside was rising. The car was sinking. No time for subtlety. Ethan pulled himself up onto the hood, grabbed the windshield wiper for balance, and drove his elbow into the driver's side window. Pain shot up his arm, but the safety glass held. He hit it again and again, and on the fourth strike it finally gave way, shattering into 1,000 tiny pieces. Water immediately rushed in faster, and the woman screamed. "Give me your hand!" Ethan shouted. She was frozen, staring at the water rising around her waist. "Now!" Something in his voice snapped her out of it. She reached for him, and he grabbed her wrists, pulling with everything he had. She was stuck seatbelt, of course. "The seatbelt, unbuckle it!" Her hands disappeared beneath the water, fumbling. The car was sinking faster now, tilting nose down. They had seconds, maybe less. "I can't," she cried. "It won't." Ethan didn't let her finish. He took a deep breath and dove through the window into the car. The water was shockingly cold and dark. His fingers found the seatbelt, followed it to the buckle. It was jammed, the mechanism probably damaged by the water or the impact. His lungs were already burning. He pulled his pocket knife out, thank God he'd grabbed it from the house, and sawed at the belt. The fabric was tough, designed not to tear, but desperation gave him strength. It finally gave way. He grabbed the woman around the waist and pushed her up toward the window. She went through, and he followed his lungs, screaming for air. They broke the surface together, gasping. The bridge was right there, too close. The current was pulling them toward the jagged edge where the road simply ended, where the concrete had been torn away like paper. Beyond it was a drop into churning water and debris, certain death. "Swim," Ethan commanded, but the woman was already struggling, her movements uncoordinated, panicky. He grabbed her again, this time getting his arm around her chest in a rescue hold. "Stop fighting. Let me—" She went limp. Whether from trust or exhaustion, he didn't know. He kicked hard, angling across the current, using it when he could, fighting it when he had to. His legs felt like lead. His arms were numb. But Lily's face flashed in his mind, his little girl waiting in the truck, counting on him to come back, and he found strength he didn't know he had. His feet hit something solid. Ground. Pavement. He dragged them both up onto what turned out to be the raised entrance to a strip mall, now an island in the flood. They collapsed together, coughing, gasping. "Are you hurt?" he managed to ask between breaths. The woman was shaking violently, whether from cold or shock, but she shook her head. In the dim light from a still-functioning emergency light, he could see she was wearing what had once been an expensive business suit, now torn and ruined. Her face, despite being streaked with mud and makeup, was striking high cheekbones, full lips, eyes that were an unusual shade of green. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "Oh, God, thank you." "We need to move," Ethan said, struggling to his feet. "This whole area could go under. Can you walk?" She nodded, trying to stand, but her legs gave out immediately. Without thinking, Ethan scooped her up in his arms. She was lighter than he expected, or maybe adrenaline was still giving him strength. "My truck's back that way. My daughter." "You have a daughter?" Her voice was strange, almost wondering. "Yeah, she's 6. She's waiting for me." The woman was silent as he carried her through the rain, navigating by instinct and memory more than sight. The strip mall connected to higher ground, and from there he could see his truck's headlights like a beacon in the darkness. As they got closer, he could see Lily's face pressed against the window. When she saw him, her whole face lit up, and she was opening the door before he could tell her not to. "Daddy. Daddy, you were gone so long." "I'm okay, baby. I'm okay. Get back in the truck." He set the woman down carefully by the passenger door. She was staring at Lily with an expression he couldn't read. "Is this your daughter?" she asked softly. "Lily, this is—" He realized he didn't even know her name. "Claire?" The woman supplied, managing a weak smile for the child. "My name is Claire." "You're all wet." Lily observed with 6-year-old directness. We both are, Ethan said. Come on, we need to get to the shelter. He helped Claire into the passenger seat, noting how she winced as she moved, probably bruised from being thrown around in the car. Lily climbed back into her booster seat, Mr. Bunny still clutched tightly. Is she okay, Daddy? Lily whispered loudly enough for everyone to hear. She will be, Ethan said, starting the engine. The heater immediately kicked on and Claire made a small sound of relief. The drive to the high school was surreal. Streets he'd driven 1,000 times were unrecognizable. Some were flooded, forcing him to backtrack and find alternate routes. Others were blocked by fallen trees or abandoned vehicles. Claire sat silently beside him, shaking despite the heat blasting from the vents. In the back, Lily had resumed her soft singing. You saved my life, Claire said suddenly, so quietly he almost didn't hear her over the rain. Anyone would have... No, her voice was firm despite her chattering teeth. They wouldn't have. You risked everything. You have a daughter to think about, and you still... She trailed off, looking out at the darkness. I couldn't just leave you. Most people could. Something in her tone made him glance at her. She was crying silently, tears mixing with the rain still dripping from her hair. Hey, he said gently. You're okay now. We're all okay. She nodded, but didn't stop crying. The high school appeared out of the darkness like a ship in a storm, every window blazing with emergency lighting. The parking lot was chaos, cars everywhere, people running through the rain, National Guard vehicles trying to maintain order. Ethan found a spot and turned to Claire. We should get you to the medical station. You might be in shock. No hospitals, she said quickly, almost panicky. Please, no hospitals. He frowned. You could be hurt. I'm fine. I can't go to a hospital. Please. There was real fear in her voice, and not the kind that came from nearly drowning. Ethan studied her for a moment, then nodded slowly. Okay, no hospitals, but at least let the medics at the shelter look at you. Relief washed over her face. Thank you. They made a strange procession entering the shelter, Ethan carrying Lily on one arm and supporting Claire with the other. The gymnasium had been transformed into an emergency shelter with cots arranged in rows and tables set up with food and supplies. The noise was overwhelming after the isolation of the storm. Crying children, worried voices, volunteers shouting instructions. A Red Cross volunteer immediately approached them. Are you injured? We have a medical station. Just cold and wet, Ethan said, feeling Claire tense beside him. We need blankets and dry clothes if you have them. The volunteer, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, took in their sodden appearance and nodded. Follow me. She led them to a corner where boxes of donated clothes were being sorted. These might not fit perfectly, but they're dry. There are changing areas set up in the locker rooms. Do you need help with the little one? We're okay, thank you, Ethan said. The volunteer handed them blankets and moved on to the next group of refugees. Claire stood there looking lost despite the blanket wrapped around her shoulders. Daddy, I'm cold, Lily said, and Ethan realized he'd been standing there paralyzed by the enormity of what had just happened. Right. Let's get changed, sweetheart. He turned to Claire. Will you be okay? She nodded, still looking dazed. Yes. Thank you. Again. In the men's locker room, Ethan quickly changed Lily into dry clothes, a boy's sweatshirt that was too big, and sweatpants that had to be rolled up 3 times. She looked tiny and vulnerable, and he hugged her tightly. Were you scared when I was gone? He asked. A little, she admitted. But I knew you'd come back. You always come back. The simple faith in her voice made his throat tight. He changed his own clothes quickly, jeans that were too short and a flannel shirt that was too wide, but they were blessedly dry. When they emerged, Claire was already there, transformed. Someone had given her jeans and an oversized university sweatshirt. Her hair was still damp, but pulled back in a ponytail. Without the makeup and expensive clothes, she looked younger, more vulnerable. She also looked familiar somehow, though Ethan couldn't place why. The volunteer said they're serving soup, she said, gesturing toward the far end of the gym. Are you hungry? This last was directed at Lily, who nodded shyly. They found seats at one of the long tables that had been set up. The soup was simple chicken noodle from enormous pots, but it was hot and filling. Lily ate quietly. exhaustion finally catching up with her. Her eyelids were drooping by the time she finished. "There are cots over there," Claire said, noticing. "She should rest." They found 3 cots together in a relatively quiet corner. Lily was asleep almost before her head hit the thin pillow Mr. Bunny tucked under her chin. Ethan sat on the cot beside her, suddenly aware of how exhausted he was. Every muscle ached. His elbow, where he'd smashed the window, was swollen and purple. Claire sat on the 3rd cot, watching him. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Why did you do it?" "Really?" "You had your daughter to think about. You didn't know me. I was just some stranger in a car." Ethan was quiet for a moment, considering. "My wife died 3 years ago," he said finally. "Cancer. She was 31. Claire's eyes widened slightly, but she didn't interrupt. "The last thing she said to me, the very last thing, was teach her to be brave. She meant Lily, of course, but..." He paused, struggling to articulate something he'd never put into words. "How can I teach her to be brave if I'm not? How can I tell her to do the right thing if I don't? I saw you in that car and I thought, what if it was Sarah? What if it was Lily someday and everyone just drove past because it was too dangerous?" Claire was crying again silently. "Your wife sounds like she was special." "She was." Ethan smiled sadly. "She would have liked you." "How could you possibly know that?" "Because you didn't panic. Even when the car was sinking, even when you were terrified, you didn't completely panic. Sarah always said you could tell everything about a person by how they handled crisis." Claire laughed, but it was bitter. "I don't think she would have liked me if she knew." She stopped abruptly, looking away. "Knew what?" "Nothing. It doesn't matter." Before Ethan could respond, a commotion near the entrance caught their attention. Several people in suits had entered, looking ridiculously out of place among the refugees. They were scanning the crowd with purpose, and Ethan saw Claire shrink back. "Friends of yours?" he asked. "Something like that," she murmured, but she made no move to signal them. One of them, a severe-looking woman with steel-gray hair, spotted Claire and immediately started toward them, the others following. Claire sighed and stood up. "Ms. Donovan," the woman said, relief evident in her voice. "Thank God. We've been looking everywhere." "Donovan, why did that name sound familiar?" "I'm fine, Margaret," Claire said, her entire demeanor changing. Where before she'd been vulnerable, almost fragile now, she stood straighter, her voice carrying an authority that made people nearby turn to look. "The board is in emergency session," Margaret continued. "The Singapore deal, that's I..." "Can wait," Claire interrupted. "As you can see, we have more pressing concerns." "But ma'am..." "I said it can wait." The steel in her voice was unmistakable. Margaret stepped back, properly chastised. That's when Ethan finally made the connection. Donovan. Claire Donovan, the CEO of Donovan Industries, the massive tech company that had just built a new campus outside the city. He'd seen her picture in the papers, though she was notorious for avoiding the media. She was one of the youngest billionaires in the country, and he'd just pulled her out of a sinking Mercedes. Claire turned back to him, and something in his expression must have given away his recognition. She smiled sadly. "Now you know," she said softly. You're the woman you saved from drowning," she said firmly. "That's all that matters tonight." Margaret cleared her throat. "Ms. Donovan, we really should get you to a hospital. And then..." "I'm staying here tonight," Claire announced, surprising everyone, including Ethan. "But ma'am, we have the helicopter standing by. We can have you back in the city." "I said I'm staying." She looked at the suited entourage. "All of you make yourselves useful. This shelter needs supplies, food, blankets, medical equipment. I want trucks here within the hour. The roads? Then use the helicopters. I don't care if you have to airlift in supplies one box at a time. These people need help." She paused, her gaze sweeping over the crowded gym. "And set up a relief fund. Anyone affected by the flooding gets assistance, no questions asked." "How much should we allocate?" Margaret asked, pulling out a tablet. "Start with 10 million. We'll increase it if needed." Ethan's jaw dropped. 10 million just like that. The suited people scattered, pulling out phones, barking orders. Within seconds, only Margaret remained. "Anything else, ma'am?" Claire glanced at Ethan, then at sleeping Lily. "Find out everything about the shelter's needs. Work with the Red Cross, the National Guard, whoever's in charge. I want a full report in an hour." Margaret nodded and hurried off. Claire sat back down on the cot, suddenly looking exhausted again. $10 million, Ethan said, still stunned. "It's just money," she said quietly. "It can't buy back a life. It can't—" She stopped looking at Lily. "It can't bring back what's lost. Still, it's incredibly generous." She was quiet for a moment. "Can I tell you something? Something I've never told anyone." Ethan nodded, sensing this was important. "My parents died when I was 7. Flash flood in California, ironically enough. They were driving home from a party, took a shortcut through a canyon. The rain came out of nowhere. I'm sorry. I was with a babysitter. I remember waiting for them to come home, watching out the window, just like—" She gestured at Lily. "Just like she was watching for you tonight." Understanding dawned on Ethan. "That's why you didn't want to go to the hospital. The media attention." "Partly, but also because hospitals remind me of identifying their bodies." She laughed bitterly. $1 billion in the bank, and I'm still that 7-year-old girl waiting for parents who aren't coming home. Without thinking, Ethan reached over and took her hand. She startled at the contact, but didn't pull away. "You're not that little girl anymore," he said gently. "You survived. You built something amazing. Your parents would be proud." "Would they? I spend 18 hours a day in boardrooms. I have 3 homes I never see. I can't remember the last time I did something that actually mattered." She squeezed his hand. "Until tonight. Tonight you reminded me what actually matters. I just pulled you out of a car." "No." Her voice was intense. "You risked everything for a stranger. You showed me what courage actually looks like. Not the boardroom kind, not hostile takeovers or market manipulation. Real courage. The kind that jumps into floodwater to save someone else." Ethan didn't know what to say to that. They sat in silence for a while, still holding hands, watching Lily sleep. Around them, the shelter buzzed with activity as more refugees arrived and volunteers distributed supplies. "Can I ask you something now?" Ethan said eventually. "Turnabout's fair play. What were you doing out there in the flood zone? Someone like you must have had warnings, ways to evacuate early." Claire's face clouded. "I was being stubborn. There's a community center I fund near the river, low-income families after-school programs. I wanted to make sure everyone got out safely. I stayed too long, and then my driver—" She paused. "My driver had a family emergency. His son was missing in the floods. I told him to go, that I'd be fine." "You drove yourself, She smiled ruefully. "I haven't driven myself anywhere in 5 years. Turns out I'm not very good at it anymore, especially not in a flood." "You were trying to help people. Fat lot of good it did. I just became another person who needed rescuing." "Hey." He waited until she looked at him. "You cared enough to check on them. That matters." Before she could respond, Margaret reappeared with an entourage of aid workers. "Ms. Donovan, we've coordinated with the Red Cross. The first helicopter should arrive in 20 minutes with medical supplies. 3 more are en route with food and blankets." Claire immediately shifted back into CEO mode, discussing logistics and distribution. Ethan watched, fascinated by the transformation. She was clearly in her element, making quick decisions, delegating tasks. But every few seconds, her eyes would flick back to him and Lily, as if reassuring herself they were still there. An hour passed, then 2. The promised supplies arrived, helicopter rotors thundering over the storm. The shelter transformed from a place of desperation to one of relative comfort. Hot meals replaced cold sandwiches. Thick blankets replaced thin sheets. A full medical station was established with proper equipment. Through it all, Claire worked tirelessly. She served food, distributed blankets, sat with elderly refugees, and listened to their stories. She held crying children while their parents filled out insurance paperwork. She was everywhere, doing everything. "Your girlfriend's pretty amazing, so," one of the volunteers said to Ethan as they watched Claire helping an elderly man find his medication among the supplies. "She's not my we just met tonight." The volunteer raised an eyebrow. "Could have fooled me. The way she keeps looking at you and your daughter." Ethan followed Claire's gaze and found her watching them again. When their eyes met, she smiled a real smile, not the polished one he'd seen her give to the reporters who'd started showing up. The media presence was growing by the hour. Apparently, Claire Donovan personally overseeing disaster relief was big news. She handled them with practiced ease, giving brief statements about corporate responsibility and community support, but always redirecting focus to the rescue efforts and the needs of the refugees. Not once did she mention being rescued herself. When one reporter asked how she'd ended up at the shelter, she simply said she'd been caught in the flooding like everyone else. "Why don't you tell them?" Ethan asked her during a brief break. "It's a hell of a story." "Because it's not my story to tell," she said simply. "And because you deserve privacy. Your daughter deserves privacy. The last thing you need is cameras in your face reporters digging into your life." She was protecting them, he realized. This woman he'd known for less than 6 hours was using her considerable influence to shield him and Lily from the media circus that would inevitably follow if the story got out. Lily woke up around midnight disoriented and cranky. "Daddy, where are we?" "Still at the shelter, baby. Are you hungry?" She shook her head, then noticed Claire. "You're still here." "I am," Claire said, sitting on the edge of Lily's cot. "Is that okay?" Lily studied her with that intense scrutiny only children could manage. "You're pretty," she finally declared. Claire laughed, a genuine delighted sound. "Thank you, so are you." "My mommy was pretty too," Lily said matter-of-factly. "She's in heaven now." "I know," Claire said gently. "Your daddy told me. Bet she was wonderful." "She was. She used to sing to me." Lily's lower lip trembled slightly. "I miss her." "Of course you do." Claire glanced at Ethan, seeming to ask permission. He nodded. She carefully put her arm around Lily. "You know what, my mommy is in heaven too, and sometimes when I miss her really badly, I close my eyes and remember her voice." "Does it help?" "Sometimes. And sometimes I still cry, and that's okay too." Lily leaned into Claire's embrace, and something in Ethan's chest tightened. He hadn't seen his daughter warm to anyone this quickly since Sarah died. "Will you stay with us?" Lily asked sleepily. "For tonight," Claire promised. "Is that okay with you, Ethan?" The sound of his name on her lips, the question in her eyes, there was something happening here, something that had nothing to do with floods or rescues or billions of dollars. "Yeah," he said softly. "That's okay with me." They spent the rest of the night like that, Claire and Ethan on either side of Lily's cot, talking quietly while she slept between them. Claire told him about growing up in boarding schools, about building her company from nothing, about the loneliness that came with success. Ethan talked about Sarah, about raising Lily alone, about his work as a contractor, and the simple satisfaction of building something with his hands. "I envy that," Claire said, "the tangibility of it. You build a house, and it's there, solid, real. I move numbers on screens, buy and sell companies. Sometimes I wonder if any of it actually exists. The jobs you create exist, the families you support. That community center you were trying to reach, those kids' lives are better because of you." "Maybe." She didn't sound convinced. "But I've never saved anyone, never put myself at risk for another person, never been brave the way you were tonight." "Bravery isn't always about grand gestures," Ethan said. "Sometimes it's about showing up, staying when you could leave, using your resources to help strangers." He gestured around the now well-supplied shelter. "This is brave too." Claire was quiet for a long moment. "You're not what I expected," she finally said. "What did you expect?" "I don't know. After you saved me, I thought, I've had people try to impress me my whole adult life. Men who see dollar signs when they look at me. But you didn't even recognize me at first, did you?" "No," he admitted. "You were just someone who needed help. And now that you know, you're still someone who needs help." At her surprised look, he continued, "Different kind of help, maybe. But everyone needs something." "What do you need?" The question hung in the air between them, loaded with possibility. Ethan looked at his sleeping daughter, then back at Claire. "I need to know my daughter will grow up in a world where people still help each other, where strangers jump into floods for other strangers, where billionaire CEOs sit on uncomfortable cots all night just to keep a little girl company." Claire's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "And what does she need?" Ethan followed her gaze to Lily, who had at some point grabbed Claire's hand in her sleep, holding it, the same way she held Mr. Bunny. "Maybe," he said carefully. She needs to see that it's okay to let new people in. That loving someone who's gone doesn't mean you can't care about someone who's here. The weight of his words settled between them. Claire squeezed Lily's hand gently. That sounds like good advice for everyone, she whispered. Dawn came slowly, gray light filtering through the high windows of the gym. The storm had finally passed, leaving an eerie quiet in its wake. Refugees began stirring, volunteers started preparing breakfast, and the real work of dealing with the aftermath would begin. Margaret appeared looking haggard but determined. Ms. Donovan, the helicopter is ready when you are. The board meeting has been rescheduled for noon. Claire looked at Ethan and Lily, clearly torn. Go, Ethan said, though something in him rebelled at the thought. You have responsibilities. I do. She stood slowly, reluctantly releasing Lily's hand. But Ethan, this isn't goodbye. No. She pulled out a business card, then laughed at herself. God, that's so formal. Instead, she grabbed a marker from a nearby table and wrote on his hand not a number, but an address. This is my actual home. Not the penthouse the magazines show, but the place I really live. It's just outside the city. Claire, don't overthink it, she interrupted. Just, when things settle down, when you and Lily are ready, come visit, please. Before he could respond, she leaned down and kissed Lily's forehead. Then, after a moment's hesitation, pressed her lips to Ethan's cheek. Thank you, she whispered against his skin, for reminding me who I want to be. Then she was gone, striding away with Margaret and her entourage immediately engulfed in the business of being Claire Donovan's CEO. But just before she reached the door, she turned back. Across the crowded gymnasium, through the chaos of 100 conversations and crying children and clattering breakfast trays, their eyes met. She smiled, not the practiced smile of a public figure, but the genuine, vulnerable smile of the woman he'd pulled from a sinking car. The woman who'd held his daughter's hand all night. The woman who'd shown him that sometimes the people who seem to have everything are the ones who need saving the most. Then she was gone, and Ethan was left with an address written on his hand and the memory of her lips on his cheek. Daddy, Lily's voice was sleepy. Where did Claire go? She had to go to work, sweetheart. Will we see her again? Ethan looked at the address on his hand, then at his daughter's hopeful face. Outside, the sun was finally breaking through the clouds, painting the flood-damaged world in shades of gold and possibility. Yeah, baby, he said, pulling her into his arms. I think we will. The shelter continued to buzz with activity around them. Families reuniting, volunteers distributing supplies, the Red Cross coordinating relief efforts. The flood had taken so much home's possessions, peace of mind, but it had also given something back, something unexpected and precious. In saving Claire Donovan from the flood, Ethan had discovered something he hadn't even known. He'd lost the capacity to hope for something beyond mere survival. The possibility that life after loss could be more than just going through the motions for his daughter's sake. And somewhere across the city, in a helicopter bearing her back to her world of board meetings and billion-dollar deals, Claire Donovan was discovering the same thing. The man who'd pulled her from the water had done more than save her life. He'd reminded her that she had a life worth saving. The address on Ethan's hand had faded but not disappeared, much like the memory of that night 3 weeks ago. He'd traced over it with pen twice to preserve it, though. By now he'd memorized every curve of Claire's handwriting. The floodwaters had receded, leaving behind damaged homes and disrupted lives, but also leaving behind something else, a connection he couldn't quite bring himself to explore. Their small house had survived relatively intact, just some water damage in the basement that Ethan had repaired himself. Being a contractor had its advantages. He'd spent the weeks since the flood helping neighbors rebuild, taking on reconstruction jobs for costs, trying to help his community piece itself back together. It was easier than thinking about the business card Margaret had slipped into his pocket that night, easier than contemplating what it might mean to actually use that address. Daddy, are we going to see Claire today? Lily asked for what must have been the 100th time. She was sitting at the kitchen table coloring in her book while Ethan fixed breakfast. We've talked about this, sweetheart. Claire is very busy. But she said to visit. She wrote it on your hand. I saw it. Of course she had. His daughter missed nothing. It's complicated, baby. Lily set down her crayon with the kind of dramatic sigh only a 6-year-old could muster. You always say that when you're scared. The observation hit him like a physical blow, out of the mouths of babes. I'm not scared, he said automatically, then caught himself. He'd promised Sarah he'd never lie to their daughter about the important things. Okay, maybe a little scared. Why? How could he explain it to a 6-year-old that Claire Donovan lived in a different world, one where people had drivers and helicopters, and could casually donate $10 million to flood relief? That whatever had happened between them that night was probably just adrenaline and circumstance. That a single father who worked with his hands had no business showing up at a billionaire's door. Before he could formulate an answer, his phone rang. The number was unknown. Ethan Cole. He answered, expecting a client or insurance adjuster. Mr. Cole, this is Margaret Davies, Miss Donovan's assistant. His heart skipped. Is everything okay? Is Claire? She's fine, Margaret assured him, though there was something in her tone. However, she asked me to call. There's a situation where your expertise might be valuable. My expertise? You're a contractor, correct? Specializing in restoration. Yes, but Ms. Donovan has recently acquired a property that requires significant restoration. She was hoping you might consider taking on the project. Ethan frowned. This felt wrong somehow, like a pretense. Ms. Davies, if Claire wants to see me, she doesn't need to invent Mr. Cole. Margaret interrupted, her voice softer now. The property is real. The need for restoration is real. But you're right that this is also something else. She hasn't been the same since that night. She works 18-hour days, she's closed 3 major deals, and she's overseen the entire flood relief operation, but she's not the same. What do you mean? There was a pause. She smiles differently. Genuinely, I mean. She started a program for underprivileged children to learn coding. She's been visiting the flood victims personally, not just writing checks, and she keeps a photo on her desk that wasn't there before. A photo. From the shelter that night. Some volunteer took it, Miss. Donovan sitting with your daughter, both of them asleep. Your daughter is holding her hand. Ethan's throat tightened. He remembered waking to find them like that, Claire having finally dozed off just before dawn, Lily's small hand wrapped around hers. She won't call you herself, Margaret continued. She says if you wanted to see her, you would have used the address she gave you. But I've worked for her for 8 years, Mr. Cole, and I've never seen her like this, so I'm calling. This property is 40 minutes from your house. It's an old estate abandoned for years. She bought it specifically because... Margaret stopped. Well, perhaps she should tell you that part herself. Will you come? Ethan looked at Lily, who was watching him with those big brown eyes that saw too much. Today, if possible, this afternoon. You can bring your daughter. There's plenty of space for her to play safely. After getting the details and hanging up, Ethan stood there for a moment processing. Lily had abandoned all pretense of coloring. We're going to see Claire, she stated, not a question. How did you look the same way you did when you pulled her out of the water, like you're about to do something brave. 3 hours later, Ethan turned his truck onto a winding private road, Lily bouncing with excitement in her booster seat. The property was stunning, even in its neglect. Rolling hills, ancient oaks, and then appearing around a bend, the house itself. It must have been magnificent once. Victorian era. 3 stories, wraparound porches, intricate gingerbread trim now weathered and broken. The grounds were overgrown fountains crumbling a greenhouse with half its panes shattered. It looked like something from a fairy tale that had been forgotten by time. Claire was standing on the front steps. No entourage. No. Margaret. Just her in jeans and a simple sweater, her hair pulled back. She looked younger than she had that night at the shelter, but also somehow more uncertain. You came, she said as they got out of the truck, and there was such relief in her voice that Ethan's last doubts evaporated. Claire. Lily ran to her without hesitation, and Claire caught her, lifting her into a hug that was both natural and surprising. Hello, sweetheart, I've missed you. Daddy was scared to come, Lily announced, because 6-year-olds had no filter. Lily. Claire laughed, setting Lily down but keeping hold of her hand. That's okay. I was scared you wouldn't come. She looked at Ethan, then really looked at him, and he felt that same electric connection from the shelter. Whatever this was, it hadn't been just adrenaline. Thank you for coming, she said softly. I know the pretense was thin. Margaret said you need restoration work. I do. She turned to look at the house, but not just for the building. Before Ethan could ask what she meant, she was leading them up the steps, Lily chattering about everything from her new teacher to the frog she'd found in their backyard. Claire listened with genuine interest, asking questions, remembering details from their night at the shelter. The interior of the house was both worse and better than the exterior. Water damage, certainly. Broken windows, crumbling plaster, a partially collapsed ceiling in what must have been the ballroom. But the bones were incredible hand-carved banisters, original hardwood floors, stained glass windows that painted rainbow patterns on the walls. It was built in 1892, Claire explained as they walked through. A railroad baron's summer estate. It's been empty for 20 years. Why did you buy it? Ethan asked, running his hand along a dusty mantelpiece already cataloging what would need to be done. Claire was quiet for a moment, watching Lily explore a window seat. The night after the flood, I went back to my penthouse. 32nd floor, floor-to-ceiling windows, perfect view of the city. And I stood there looking out at all those lights and felt like I was drowning again. All that space, all that luxury, and I was completely alone. She moved to a window looking out at the overgrown gardens. Then I remembered what you said about building things with your hands, about creating something solid and real, and I thought, what if I had a project? Something that mattered, something that could become what? She turned to him. A home. A real home. Not an investment or a status symbol, but a place where... She paused, vulnerable in a way that made his chest tight. A place where a little girl could have a birthday party, where friends could gather for dinner, where someone could build a life instead of just a career. Claire, I know what you're thinking. Poor little rich girl buying a mansion to fill the void. But it's not about the house, Ethan. It's about what I want to fill it with. And what's that? She looked at Lily, who had found a dusty chandelier crystal and was holding it up to the light rainbows dancing across her face. Life. Real life. The kind where people matter more than stock prices. Where bedtime stories are more important than board meetings. Where someone notices if you don't come home. The raw honesty in her voice undid him. This wasn't the CEO who commanded boardrooms and moved markets. This was the woman who'd held his daughter's hand all night, who'd lost her parents at 7, who'd spent her life building walls of success around a heart that had never fully healed. It's a big project, he said, keeping his voice professional, even as his pulse quickened. 6 months minimum, probably closer to a year. I'm not in a hurry. It won't be cheap. I'm not worried about the money. And you'd want to be involved. Most clients prefer to stay away during construction. I want to be here for all of it. I want to learn. She moved closer to him. I want to understand what it's like to build something with purpose, not just profit. Daddy, look, Lily called from the next room. There's a library with a ladder that slides. They followed her voice to find her in what was indeed a library 2 stories tall with built-in shelves and an old rolling ladder that miraculously still worked. Lily was enchanted. We could put so many books here, she breathed, like Beauty and the Beast. You like books? Claire asked. Mommy used to read to me every night. Daddy does now, but he does the voices wrong. I do not, Ethan protested, but he was smiling. You do. The dragon sounds like a frog. Claire laughed, and the sound echoed in the empty room, bringing it to life in a way that had nothing to do with restoration. They spent the next 2 hours going through the house, Ethan taking notes, mentally cataloging the work needed, while Claire asked questions about everything: load-bearing walls, historical preservation, modern updates versus maintaining character. Lily appointed herself assistant explorer, finding hidden doors, servant stairs, and a dumbwaiter that delighted her beyond measure. The kitchen will need complete updating, Ethan said, surveying the antiquated space. We can maintain the period aesthetic, but with modern appliances. Claire asked, and there was something hopeful in the single word. If you're hiring me for the job. I'm hiring you for more than that, she said quietly, then seemed to catch herself. I mean, if you're interested, I know you have other clients, other obligations. Claire. He stopped her nervous rambling. I'm interested. The relief on her face was almost painful to see. How lonely had she been? He wondered that the simple acceptance of a job offer could mean so much. They ended up in what must have been the nursery-faded wallpaper with tiny roses still clinging to the walls. Lily had run outside to explore the gardens visible through the window. Claire stood in the center of the room, arms wrapped around herself. My mother was pregnant when she died, she said suddenly. I was going to have a little brother. They were coming home from the doctor's appointment where they found out it was a boy. Ethan moved closer but didn't touch her, sensing she needed space to share this. I've never told anyone that, not even my therapist. Funny how it's easier to tell someone who's seen you at your worst. You weren't at your worst that night. You were terrified, but you were brave. I wasn't brave. I was frozen. You survived. That's its own kind of bravery. She turned to him then. Is that what you tell yourself about Sarah? The question should have hurt, but somehow it didn't. Sometimes, on the bad days, on the good days, I remember that she wouldn't want us stuck in the past. She'd want us to be happy. Are you happy? He thought about it, watching Lily through the window as she chased a butterfly through the overgrown garden. I'm getting there. For the first time in 3 years, I'm getting there. What changed? He met her eyes. I pulled someone out of a flood. The air between them crackled with possibility. Claire took a step closer. Ethan, I need to tell you something about that night, about why I was really... Daddy, Claire. Come see... Lily's voice carried from outside, urgent with excitement. They found her in what had once been a formal garden, now a wilderness of roses gone wild. She was standing by a small pond, pointing excitedly. There are fish, big orange ones. Indeed, koi were swimming in the murky water, survivors of decades of neglect. They must be descendants of the original stock, Claire marveled. How did they survive all these years? Life finds a way, Ethan said. It's stronger than we think. Claire knelt beside Lily at the pond's edge. We'll have to clean it up for them, make it beautiful again. Can I help? Lily asked eagerly. I'm counting on it. I don't know anything about fish. As they watched the koi surface and dive, Ethan made a decision. We'll take the job. The restoration. Claire looked up at him, and the smile that spread across her face was like sunrise. All of it, she asked, and he knew she wasn't just talking about the house. All of it, son? He confirmed. They worked out the basic terms while Lily fed the koi bits of crackers from Claire's purse. Ethan would start the following week bringing in his crew for the major structural work, but handling much of the detail work himself. Claire would be on site as much as her schedule allowed, learning the trade, getting her hands dirty. I want to understand it, she said. The process. The transformation. I've spent so many years destroying things, companies, competitors, obstacles. I want to know what it's like to create. As they prepared to leave, Lily had fallen asleep in the truck, exhausted from exploration. Claire stood by Ethan's window, reluctant to say goodbye. There's something else, she said. The Singapore deal Margaret mentioned that night. It fell through because I walked away. The terms would have destroyed 3 smaller companies, put hundreds out of work. The board was furious, but I kept thinking about what you said about teaching Lily to be brave, to do the right thing. That must have cost you. 60 million in projected profits. She laughed at his expression. But I've slept better these past 3 weeks than I have in years. No sleeping pills, no anxiety medication. Just peace. I'm glad. It's because of you and Lily. That night changed everything. For me too, he admitted. She reached through the window and touched his hand just briefly. I'll see you Monday. We'll be here. As he drove away, watching Claire get smaller in his rearview mirror, standing alone in front of that enormous broken house, Ethan thought about second chances, about how sometimes disaster brought unexpected gifts, about how saving someone else could end up saving yourself. Is Claire going to be our friend now? Lily asked sleepily from the back seat. Yeah, baby, I think she is. Good. She needs friends. She looks lonely. Out of the mouths of babes, indeed. Monday came quickly. Ethan arrived early with his crew, Tom and Marcus, who'd worked with him for years. and knew to keep their mouths shut about the client's identity. Claire was already there wearing work clothes that still had the tags on them, brand new boots that would be scuffed by day's end. "Reporting for duty, essay," she said with a self-deprecating smile. "Though I should warn you, I've never held a hammer in my life." "Everyone starts somewhere," Ethan said, handing her a pair of work gloves. "We're starting with demolition today, taking out the damaged plaster in the main hall." She proved to be a quick learner and a hard worker, not afraid to get dirty, not complaining when the work was tedious or difficult. She asked intelligent questions, threw herself into every task, and by lunch had charmed Tom and Marcus completely. "She's not what I expected," Marcus said quietly to Ethan while Claire was getting water. "You know, for a billionaire." "She's full of surprises," Ethan agreed. The days fell into a rhythm. Claire would arrive early sometimes, with expensive coffee for everyone, sometimes with Lily in tow on weekends. She learned to read blueprints to understand the difference between load-bearing and cosmetic, to use power tools with increasing confidence. But more than that, she began to open up. During breaks, she'd tell stories about her childhood, about building her company, about the loneliness of success. In return, Ethan shared memories of Sarah, of building their life together, of learning to navigate single parenthood. "She would have liked this," he said one afternoon, gesturing at the slowly transforming house. Sarah loved restoration projects, said they were metaphors for life, taking something broken and making it beautiful again. "She sounds wise." She was. She saw the best in everything, everyone. Even at the end when the pain was... He paused, swallowing hard. She kept saying it had been worth it. Every moment. Claire was quiet for a moment, then said, "I used to think my parents' death was meaningless, random, cruel, but lately I wonder if maybe it led me to something, to this moment, to understanding what really matters." "And what's that?" She looked at him, covered in plaster dust, sweaty and tired and more beautiful than any magazine cover CEO had a right to be. "Connection, purpose, love." The last word was barely a whisper. Before Ethan could respond, Tom called out that they'd found something in the walls, old photographs perfectly preserved of the original family who'd lived there. They spent the rest of the afternoon carefully extracting them, Claire handling each one like a treasure. "We should frame these," she said. "Put them back up when we're done. Honor the history. Most people want to make a place their own, erase the past. The past is part of what makes it beautiful, the stories, the lives lived here. We're not erasing them, we're adding to them." Week by week, the house transformed. The roof was repaired, windows replaced, plumbing and electrical updated. But more than the physical changes, something else was being built. Ethan found himself looking forward to seeing Claire each day, to their conversations during breaks, to the way she lit up when she mastered a new skill. Lily had taken to calling the estate Claire's Castle and spent every weekend there exploring, helping where she could, or just sitting with Claire while she worked, chattering about school and friends and her latest interests. One Saturday, about 2 months into the project, Ethan couldn't find either of them. He finally discovered them in the library, Claire reading to Lily from a book they'd found in a box, an old edition of fairy tales. And the prince realized that the princess had saved him just as much as he'd saved her. Claire read, her voice soft. "Like you and Daddy," Lily said matter-of-factly. Claire's eyes met Ethan's over Lily's head. "Maybe a little," she agreed. That night, after Lily had fallen asleep on the couch, they'd moved into the library. Claire and Ethan sat on the front porch sharing a bottle of wine she'd brought. "Margaret says I'm different," she said, apropos of nothing. "Are you?" "Completely. I've restructured the company priorities. We're focusing on sustainable development now, ethical acquisitions. The board thinks I've lost my mind." "Have you?" She laughed. "Maybe. Or maybe I've found it." She turned to him. "I've been thinking about what you said that first day. About filling this house with life. Yeah. I want to have a Christmas party here. For all the families affected by the flood, for the workers who've helped rebuild, for..." She paused, gathering courage. "For you and Lily. That's 3 months away. We might not be done by then. Then we'll have it anyway, perfect or not." She took a breath. "I'm tired of waiting for perfect, Ethan. I've been waiting for perfect my whole life, and all it's brought me is loneliness." The vulnerability in her voice, the way she was looking at him. Ethan set down his wine glass and turned to face her fully. Claire, I know this is complicated. I know our worlds don't exactly align. I know you're still grieving Sarah, and I would never want to. He stopped her with a gentle hand on hers. Sarah's been gone 3 years. I'll always love her, always miss her, but she wouldn't want me to stop living. And lately, for the first time since she died, I feel like I'm actually living again. Because of the house. No, you know it's not the house. She turned her hand in his, interlacing their fingers. I'm scared, she admitted. I don't know how to do this. I know how to negotiate billion-dollar deals, how to hostile take over a company, how to read market trends, but this I'm completely lost. You jumped into a flood for strangers. You're rebuilding this house with your own hands. You read fairy tales to my daughter. I think you're doing just fine. Your daughter is extraordinary, by the way. You've done an amazing job with her. She likes you, really likes you, and she doesn't like many people. I love her, Claire said simply. Is that weird? To love someone else's child so quickly? No, Sarah always said love wasn't about time. It was about recognition. Sometimes you just recognize your people. Is that what we are? People who recognize each other. Instead of answering with words, Ethan leaned in and kissed her. It was gentle, tentative at first, both of them testing this new territory. Then Claire's hand came up to cup his face, and the kiss deepened, became something more certain. When they broke apart, both were breathless. I should probably mention, Claire said with a shaky laugh, I haven't done this in a very long time. Kissed someone. Felt anything real. She looked at him wonderingly. You saved more than my life that night, Ethan. You saved my soul. You saved mine right back. They sat in comfortable silence, hands still linked, watching fireflies dance in the garden. Inside, Lily slept peacefully, surrounded by books and possibility. The house around them was still more broken than whole, but it was becoming something beautiful. I should take Lily home, Ethan said eventually, though he made no move to go. Or you could stay. There are enough beds now that we've restored the guest wing. At his look, she added quickly, just to sleep. I like knowing you're both here. The house feels less empty. Okay, he said simply. That night, with Lily tucked into a bed in a room overlooking the garden, Ethan lay in the guest room next door thinking about unexpected gifts. About how a flood could wash away the old and make room for the new. About how saving someone could lead to being saved in return. Down the hall, Claire lay in her own bed, the first one she'd moved into the house. For years, she'd taken sleeping pills to quiet her mind, but tonight, her thoughts were peaceful. She could hear the old house settling around her, could imagine the lives that would fill it. Lily's laughter, dinner parties with friends she hadn't made yet. Quiet mornings with coffee and conversation. And Ethan, always Ethan, whose steady presence had become as essential to her renovation as any tool or blueprint. The morning after that first kiss dawned bright and clear sunlight streaming through the restored windows of the old house. Ethan woke to the sound of Lily's laughter drifting up from somewhere below, mixed with Claire's voice. He found them in the kitchen attempting to make pancakes on the ancient stove they hadn't yet replaced. Daddy Claire can't flip pancakes, Lily announced gleefully, pointing at a somewhat charred attempt on a plate. In my defense, Claire said, flour in her hair and batter splattered on her shirt. I've never actually cooked pancakes before. Never? Lily was aghast. I had a chef, Claire admitted sheepishly. Several, actually. Ethan moved to the stove gently, taking the spatula from her. Here, let me show you. He positioned himself behind her, his hand over hers on the handle. It's all in the wrist, quick and confident. He felt her tense slightly at his proximity, then relax into him. Together they flipped the next pancake perfectly. See natural talent, he murmured near her ear. I had a good teacher, she replied softly. They were interrupted by Lily tugging on Ethan's shirt. Are you and Claire dating now? The adults froze, exchanging glances over her head. Why would you ask that, sweetheart? Ethan managed. Because you look at her the way you used to look at Mommy, and she looks at you like the princess looks at the prince in my books. Claire knelt down to Lily's level. Would it be okay with you if we were... Lily considered this seriously. Would you come to my soccer games, if you wanted me to, and help with homework? Absolutely. And not make Daddy sad? Claire's eyes filled with tears. Oh, sweetheart, I would never want to make your daddy sad. I want to make him happy. You both make me very happy. Lily nodded decisively. Then it's okay, but you have to learn to cook better. Daddy can't make everything. The simple acceptance of a child's logic broke through whatever tension remained. Claire pulled Lily into a hug, and Ethan wrapped his arms around both of them, feeling something shift and settle into place. But the real world had a way of intruding on perfect moments. The following Monday, Ethan arrived at the house to find 3 black SUVs in the driveway and a cluster of suited figures on the front porch. Claire stood in the middle of them, her body language tense, her voice carrying the sharp edge he'd only heard her use once before. This discussion is over, Richard. I've made my decision. You're being emotional, a silver-haired man replied. This isn't like you, Claire. Abandoning the Singapore deal was bad enough, but now you're hemorrhaging money on this. He gestured dismissively at the house vanity project. It's my money to hemorrhage. It's the shareholders' money. And as chairman of the board, I have a responsibility. You have a responsibility to respect my decisions as CEO. Claire's voice could have cut glass. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have work to do. The man Richard noticed Ethan approaching. His eyes narrowed as he took in the work clothes, the truck with Cole Construction on the side. So this is what it's about, he said slowly. I should have known. How much is she paying you? Richard. Claire stepped between them. Don't you dare. It's a fair question. How much does it cost to seduce a billionaire these days? Ethan felt his fists clench, but before he could respond, Lily's voice piped up from behind him. He hadn't even noticed her getting out of the truck. That's not very nice, she said, marching up to Richard with all the righteous indignation a 6-year-old could muster. Claire's our friend. Daddy saved her from drowning. You should say sorry. Richard looked down at the small girl confronting him, momentarily speechless. This is Lily, Claire said, moving to stand beside them. Ethan's daughter. And if you ever speak to or about them that way again, you'll be looking for a new job. Are we clear? The threat in her voice was unmistakable. Richard straightened his tie, trying to salvage his dignity. The board meets Thursday. We'll be discussing your recent erratic decisions. I look forward to it, Claire said coolly. The suits retreated to their vehicles, leaving an uncomfortable silence in their wake. Claire seemed to deflate once they were gone. I'm sorry about that. Richard Blackstone. He's been with the company since I started it, helped me build it. He thinks that gives him the right to be an ass, Ethan suggested. Despite everything, Claire laughed. Something like that. Are you okay? I will be. This was coming anyway. The board's been restless since I started changing our direction. She looked at the house, then back at him. They think I'm losing my edge going soft. Are you? She considered this. Maybe, or maybe I'm finally finding it. The real edge, the one that matters. Lily tugged on Claire's hand. Why was that man so mean? Some people, Claire said carefully, think money is more important than everything else. They get upset when others disagree. That's silly. Daddy says the important things can't be bought. Your daddy is very wise. That afternoon, while Lily was at school, Ethan found Claire in the library, surrounded by papers, laptop, open clearly in full CEO mode despite the paint-stained jeans. Thursday's board meeting, she explained. I need to prepare my defense. Your defense, you're the CEO. That can change. If they get enough votes, she shrugged, trying to seem unconcerned, but Ethan could see the tension in her shoulders. Would that be so bad? She looked up at him, surprised. It's my company. I built it from nothing. I know, but is it making you happy? It's made me wealthy. That's not what I asked. She was quiet for a long moment. No, she finally admitted. It hasn't made me happy in years, maybe ever. It was just something to do, something to prove I could do. Then maybe it's time for something new. Like what? It's all I know. Ethan moved some papers aside and sat next to her. You know more than that now. You know how to restore things, how to make something broken beautiful again. You know how to make a 6-year-old laugh, how to make pancakes badly, but still. She leaned into him. The board's right about one thing. I have gone soft. 3 months ago, I would have destroyed Richard for challenging me. Now I just feel sorry for him. Why? Because he'll never understand what I've found here. He has 3 ex-wives, no relationship with his kids, and a penthouse full of expensive art he never looks at. He has everything and nothing. Oh, like you did. Exactly like I did. She turned to face him. That night in the flood, when I was in that car, I wasn't thinking about the company or the money or any of it. I was thinking about how I was going to die alone, and no one would really miss me. They'd miss my signatures, my decisions, my money, but not me. That's not true. It was true then, but now. She gestured at the house around them, at the life they'd been building together. Now I have something worth losing, something worth fighting for. Then fight for it. Even if it means losing the company. The company isn't you, Claire. It's something you built, but it's not who you are. She kissed him then, soft and grateful. How did you get so wise? I had a good teacher, he said, echoing her words from that morning. Her name was Sarah. She taught me that life's too short to waste on things that don't matter. Thursday came too quickly. Claire left early that morning, dressed in a power suit that seemed like armor, her CEO mask firmly in place. But she stopped by the house first, finding Ethan already at work on the crown molding in the dining room. How do I look? She asked, and he could hear the nervousness beneath the bravado. Like someone who's going to win. And if I don't, then you'll still come home to us tonight. The word home hung between them, loaded with promise. Claire kissed him, not caring about her lipstick, then kissed Lily, who was coloring at the makeshift table they'd set up. Knock 'em dead, Claire, Lily called as she left. That's the plan, sweetheart. The hours dragged. Ethan tried to focus on work, but his mind kept drifting to Claire in that boardroom, fighting for her vision against people who only saw dollar signs. At 3 o'clock, his phone buzzed. It's over. Claire's voice was strange, unreadable. What happened? Can you come? Both of you. I'm at the house. He found her sitting on the porch steps, still in her suit, but barefoot, her heels discarded beside her. She looked up as they approached, and her face was streaked with tears, but she was smiling. They fired me, she said, and laughed at their expressions. Well, technically, I was voted out as CEO. Richard will take over. Claire, I'm so sorry. I'm not. She stood, pulling them both into a hug. I'm free. For the first time in my adult life, I'm completely free. But the company will be fine without me, maybe better. Richard's good at the ruthless stuff the pure profit plays. That's not who I am anymore. She pulled back to look at them. I kept my shares, so I'm still wealthy, obscenely so. But I don't have to be that person anymore, the one who destroys things. So what will you do? Lily asked. Well, first, I'm going to finish restoring this house. Then, she looked at Ethan. I was thinking about starting a foundation for kids who've lost parents. Scholarships, counseling, support. Real help, not just money. The Claire Donovan Foundation, Ethan suggested. Actually, I was thinking the Sarah Foundation. At his shocked look, she continued, if that's okay, she raised an amazing daughter, loved deeply, and taught people to be brave. Seems like the perfect name. Ethan couldn't speak. Lily, however, had no such problem. Mommy would love that, she said simply. Then, does this mean you'll be around more all the time if that's okay? It's very okay. That night, they celebrated with takeout pizza on the floor of the great room, the chandelier they'd spent weeks restoring, casting rainbow patterns on the walls. Claire had changed into jeans and one of Ethan's work shirts, her CEO persona packed away with the suit. I need to tell you something, she said as Lily dozed against her shoulder. About that night, the flood. You don't have to. I do. I wasn't just checking on the community center. I was running away. Ethan waited, sensing this was important. There was a man, someone the board wanted me to marry. Good for the company image, they said. 2 powerful families joining forces. I'd been going along with it because why not? It's not like I had anything else. She stroked Lily's hair absently. That night he proposed, in front of everyone at this charity gala. Cameras, reporters, the whole production. And I stood there looking at this ring that cost more than most people's houses, and I realized I'd rather die than live that life. So you ran. I ran, got in my car and drove no plan, no destination. The community center was an excuse. I just needed to be anywhere else. She looked at him. The flood seemed like divine intervention at first, a way out, until I was actually drowning, and then I saw your face through the water, and I wanted to live. Not just survive, but actually live. She shifted to face him fully. You didn't just pull me from that car, Ethan. You pulled me into life. He kissed her, then careful not to wake Lily. When they pulled apart, Claire was crying again, but they were good tears, cleansing tears. I love you, she whispered. I know it's fast, I know it's complicated, but I love you too, he said simply. Sarah always said I'd know when it was right, that it would feel like coming home. Does it? He looked around the partially restored room at his daughter sleeping peacefully against Claire's shoulder at this woman who'd crashed into their lives in the most literal way possible. Yeah, it does. The weeks that followed were a blur of activity. Without the company demanding her attention, Claire threw herself completely into the restoration. She learned to use a table saw to match historical paint colors to repair the intricate plasterwork. Her hands, once manicured to perfection, became calloused and strong. The house transformed under their combined efforts. The ballroom regained its former glory. The library filled with books, a mix of classics Claire ordered by the box load, and Lily's growing collection of fairy tales. The kitchen became a functioning heart of the home, though Claire's cooking skills remained questionable at best. I can negotiate billion-dollar deals, but I can't make a proper omelet, she lamented one Sunday morning after another culinary disaster. Everyone has their talents, Ethan said diplomatically, scraping the burned eggs into the trash. Yours is everything, apparently, she said, watching him effortlessly whip up breakfast. Not everything. I can't run a company. Neither can I, apparently. You ran it for 8 years. You built something from nothing. And then I walked away. No, he corrected. You chose something better. She smiled at that, then her expression grew serious. Speaking of choosing, Lily's birthday is next month. I know. Lily would be 7. Another milestone Sarah would miss. I'd like to do something special. Here, if that's okay. Invite our whole class, have a real party. You don't have to. I want to. I never had birthday parties as a kid. Boarding school didn't really do individual celebrations. I want her to have everything I didn't. She already does, Ethan said softly. She has people who love her. She deserves more than that. She deserves magic. And magic is what Claire delivered. On Lily's 7th birthday, the estate was transformed into a fairy tale kingdom. She'd hired performers, created an elaborate treasure hunt through the gardens, even managed to locate a portable carousel. The children from Lily's class ran wild through the grounds, their laughter echoing off the old walls. This is too much, Ethan protested, watching a professional face painter turn his daughter into a butterfly. Nothing's too much for her, Claire said. Or for you. The party was in full swing when unexpected guests arrived. Margaret Davies appeared first, bearing an enormous wrapped gift followed by several familiar faces from the shelter that night. Tom and Marcus from the construction crew. Mrs. Patterson, the bus driver Ethan had rescued with the children who'd been on the bus. How did you all know? Ethan asked, overwhelmed. Claire invited us, Mrs. Patterson said. She tracked down everyone from that night. He found Claire in the kitchen pulling another cake from the oven. She'd insisted on making one herself despite her questionable baking skills. You invited everyone. She looked up, flour on her nose. They're part of our story. The beginning of it, anyway. Our story? Unless you have a different version. He crossed to her, not caring about the flour or the frosting or the chaos of children outside. No, our story. I like the sound of that. Good. Because I have a proposition. Another business deal. The most important one. She set down the spatula, suddenly serious. Move in. You and Lily. Not just staying over sometimes, but really move in. Make this your home too. Claire, I know it's a big step. I know we've only been together a few months, but Ethan, I've made million-dollar decisions with less certainty than I feel about this. About us. What about Lily? This is a huge change for her. Ask her. They found Lily in the garden, crowned with flowers, holding court over her birthday kingdom. When Ethan explained what Claire was suggesting, Lily's face lit up. We'd live in the castle all the time. If you want to, Claire said nervously. Lily threw her arms around Claire's waist. Yes, 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 yes. Can I pick my room? Any room you want. Even the tower room, especially the tower room. As Lily ran off to tell her friends about her new castle home, Ethan pulled Claire close. You sure about this? We come as a package deal, and kids are messy and loud and perfect, Claire finished. You're both perfect. This house needs noise and mess and life. I need it. The restoration isn't finished. It never will be, not really. There's always something to fix, to improve, to change. That's what makes it home. The party continued until sunset, children gradually picked up by parents, each leaving with elaborate gift bags Claire had assembled. As the last car pulled away, the three of them stood on the porch surveying the controlled chaos left behind. We should clean up, Ethan said half-heartedly. Tomorrow, Claire decided. Tonight we celebrate. The party's over. No, the real celebration. Just us. They ended up in the library, Lily curled between them on the restored Victorian sofa reading from her new books. The room was warm with lamplight filled with the comfortable silence of family. Claire, Lily said sleepily, are you going to marry Daddy? Both adults froze. Lily, Ethan started. Because if you are, I want to be the flower girl, and I want a purple dress. Claire looked at Ethan over Lily's head, a question in her eyes. Purple's a good color, he said carefully. The best color, Claire agreed. So you will, Lily pressed. Someday, Claire said, when the time is right. Like in fairy tales, better than fairy tales. Ethan said, thinking of Sarah, of floods and rescues, of broken things made beautiful. Real life is always better. That night after Lily was asleep in her tower room, Claire and Ethan stood in the ballroom moonlight streaming through the restored windows. Did you mean it? She asked. About purple being a good color. I meant all of it. He pulled her into a dance position, though there was no music. Sarah used to say that love wasn't about replacing what was lost, but about adding to what remained. She sounds wonderful. She was. She would have loved you, would have loved what you've done for Lily, for me. I haven't done anything. You saved me, remember? We saved each other. They danced in the silence in the house that had become a home in the life they'd built from floodwater and chance and choice. The board called today, Claire said against his shoulder. They want me to consult. Richard's already making a mess of things. Will you? No, that's not my life anymore. She pulled back to look at him. This is, you and Lily and this house and the foundation. This is what I choose. Even on the bad days when the roof leaks and Lily's cranky and I leave my muddy boots in the hall. Especially then, Perfect was lonely. This is better. A year later, almost to the day of the flood, they stood in that same ballroom, but now it was filled with flowers and guests. Lily, resplendent in her purple dress, scattered rose petals with great solemnity. Claire wore her mother's wedding dress, carefully restored like everything else in the house. Richard Blackstone had not been invited, but Margaret Davies stood as Claire's maid of honor, crying happy tears. The children from the bus were there, Mrs. Patterson, the volunteers from the shelter. Their community forged in disaster and strengthened by choice. You know, the officiant said, I'm supposed to ask if anyone objects, but given that the groom once pulled the bride from a sinking car, I think we can skip that part. Laughter rippled through the gathered crowd. Ethan held Claire's hands, feeling Sarah's presence not as a weight, but as a blessing. She would have wanted this life continuing, love, growing happiness, rebuilt from sorrow. I was drowning, Claire said in her vows long before that night, drowning in success that felt like failure, in connection that was really isolation. You didn't just save my life. You taught me what life could be. You gave me purpose, Ethan replied. When I thought my only job was to survive for Lily, you showed me we could do more than survive. We could thrive. And you gave me a daddy who smiles again. Lily piped up, making everyone laugh and cry simultaneously. They were pronounced husband and wife, as the sun set over their restored estate, painting everything golden. The photographer captured them on the porch, Ethan, Claire, and Lily, a family built from floodwaters and courage, from loss and discovery. "No more secrets," Claire said that night as they stood in their bedroom, the party winding down below. "I know everything about your past, you know everything about mine." "Actually," Ethan said, "there's one more thing." Claire tensed. "What?" "The night of the flood, when I saw you in that car. For just a second, just a heartbeat, I thought it was Sarah. The dark hair, the way you were fighting, and I thought I was being given a second chance to save her." "Oh, Ethan." "But then I pulled you out, and you were you. Not a second chance at the past, but a first chance at a future. And that's when I knew my life was about to change." Claire kissed him. Tasting tears, his or hers, it didn't matter. "Mine too, though I didn't know it then." "When did you know?" "When Lily took my hand at the shelter. When she chose to trust me, this stranger who'd disrupted your lives. That's when I knew I wanted to be worthy of that trust." "You always were." "No, but I'm learning to be." They could hear music from below, the party continuing. Their house, their home, filled with life and laughter. Tomorrow there would be work to do. The foundation to establish the never-ending restoration projects, the beautiful complications of a blended family. But tonight, they had this: each other, their daughter, their home. A life salvaged from disaster and rebuilt with love. "Come on," Claire said, pulling him toward the door. "Let's go dance at our own wedding." As they descended the stairs, Lily met them at the bottom, her purple dress twirling as she spun. "Are you happy?" she asked them both. "So happy," Claire said, scooping her up. "Good," Lily said decisively. "Mommy would be happy too. She told me in a dream that she sent Claire to us." Ethan and Claire exchanged glances over her head, choosing to believe in the magic of a child's dream, in the mystery of how tragedy could lead to joy. They entered the ballroom together, a family forged by flood and held together by choice, by love, by the everyday miracle of people saving each other. The band struck up a new song, and Ethan recognized it immediately, the melody Sarah used to hum while cooking, the one Lily had been singing that night in the truck. Claire couldn't have known, but somehow, impossibly, she was humming along. "How do you know this song?" he asked. "I don't know," she said, looking puzzled. "It just feels familiar, like coming home." And maybe that was the real miracle, not the dramatic rescue from the flood, but this finding home in unexpected places, in unexpected people. Building something beautiful from broken pieces. Learning that sometimes the best things in life came not from what you planned, but from what you never saw coming. They danced, the three of them, in their restored ballroom, in their rebuilt life, in the continuing story that had begun with water and terror and a single father's desperate courage. Outside night fell soft and peaceful over their estate, no storms on the horizon, just the quiet promise of tomorrow and all the tomorrows after that. The morning after their wedding dawned crisp and bright autumn, painting the estate grounds in shades of gold and crimson. Claire woke to find Ethan already up, standing by the window in their bedroom, watching something outside. She moved beside him, wrapping her arms around his waist from behind. "What are you looking at?" "Lily," he said softly. "She's in the garden talking to the koi." Indeed, their daughter and Claire's heart swelled at thinking of Lily, as theirs was kneeling by the restored pond, apparently having a serious conversation with the fish. "She does that when she's thinking about something important," Ethan explained. "Sarah used to say fish were good listeners because they never interrupt." "What do you think she's thinking about?" "The wedding, maybe, or the changes coming. She processes things in her own time, in her own way." Claire watched the little girl scatter food across the water's surface. "Should we be worried?" "No. She'll come to us when she's ready." They were eating breakfast on the terrace when Lily finally joined them, her expression unusually serious for a 7-year-old. "I've been thinking," she announced, climbing into her chair. "About what, sweetheart?" Ethan asked. "About Claire being my mom now." Claire's coffee cup rattled against the saucer as she set it down. "Lily, I would never try to replace—" "I know," Lily interrupted. "You can't replace Mommy, She's in heaven and in our hearts and in the stories Daddy tells. But you're here and you love us and you make Daddy laugh again." "All true," Ethan said carefully. "So I was thinking," Lily continued, her small face scrunched in concentration, "what if I had two moms, one in heaven and one here? Is that allowed?" Claire felt tears threatening. "Oh, sweetheart, that's absolutely allowed. And can I call you Mom? Not all the time because sometimes you're still Claire, but when I want to, I would be honored." Claire managed through the tightness in her throat. Lily nodded, satisfied with this resolution. "Good. Can I have pancakes now, the not burned kind?" Ethan laughed, the sound rich with relief and joy. "I'll make them. Claire's cooking hasn't improved just because we got married." "Mom's cooking," Lily corrected, trying out the word. "Mom can't cook." The simple sentence hit Claire like a physical force. Mom. She was someone's mom now. Not by birth, but by choice, by love, by the strange alchemy that had transformed a near drowning into a family. Later that morning, while Lily was at school, Claire found herself in what would become the Foundation's office, surrounded by paperwork and plans. She'd thrown herself into the project with the same intensity she'd once reserved for corporate takeovers. The Sarah Foundation would provide comprehensive support for children who'd lost parents, not just financial aid, but counseling, mentorship, educational support, even simple things like someone to attend school plays when there was no one else. "You're going to change lives," Ethan said from the doorway, seeing her surrounded by files. "That's the plan. I've already got pledges for $20 million in funding, and that's just from my former board members who feel guilty about how things ended. Guilt money? The best kind. It spends just like regular money, but comes with less strings attached." He moved into the room, examining the architectural plans spread on her desk. "Is this what I think it is, so?" "The community center by the river. The one I was trying to reach that night. I bought it." "Claire, it needs to be rebuilt anyway after the flood damage. I thought we could make it the Foundation's first project, a place for kids to go after school to get help with homework, to just be safe." She looked up at him. "I was hoping you'd oversee the construction. I mean, I know you have other clients, other obligations." "Claire?" He stopped her nervous rambling, a habit he was beginning to recognize. "Of course I'll do it. Really. It's what we do, right? Rebuild things. Make them better than before." She stood, moving into his arms. "Have I told you today that I love you?" "Twice, but I'm not keeping count." "Liar. You remember everything." It was true. He did remember everything now, not just the past with Sarah, but the present with Claire, each moment crystallizing into memory even as it happened. The way she bit her lip when concentrating. How she still couldn't flip a pancake but had mastered French toast. The sound of her laughter mixing with Lily's in the echoing rooms of their home. 3 months into their marriage, winter came early and harsh. They were cozied up in the library one evening, Lily doing homework, while Claire reviewed foundation applications and Ethan sketched renovation plans for the community center when the lights flickered. "Storm's getting worse," Ethan observed, looking toward the windows where snow swirled against the glass. Claire tensed. Ever since the flood storms made her anxious, though she tried to hide it. Ethan reached over and took her hand, squeezing gently. "We're safe here," he reminded her. "High ground, remember." Before she could respond, the doorbell rang, unusual, given the weather and the late hour. Ethan went to answer it, Claire and Lily following curiously. A young woman stood on their doorstep, barely out of her teens, shivering despite a thin coat. She held a baby who couldn't have been more than 6 months old, bundled in blankets but crying pitifully. "I'm sorry, the woman said through chattering teeth. "My car broke down at the end of your drive. I saw the lights. My phone's dead and the baby, she's sick, and I didn't know where else." "Come in," Claire said immediately, ushering them inside. "Ethan, get blankets. Lily, can you run hot water in the kitchen? We need to warm some formula." They sprang into action with the efficiency of a well-oiled machine. Claire settled the woman Jessica they learned by the fire, while Ethan built it up higher. The baby Emma was running a fever but seemed to calm once she was warm and fed. "I was trying to get to the hospital," Jessica explained, color returning to her cheeks. "But the roads are so bad, and then the car just died." "The main road's probably closed by now anyway." Ethan said, having checked his phone. But Claire's right. We need to get Emma's fever down. Claire was already on her phone with a pediatrician friend getting instructions. Lily, meanwhile, had appointed herself assistant baby soother, making faces that actually drew weak smiles from the sick infant. She likes you, Jessica said to Lily, surprised. I'm good with babies, Lily said matter-of-factly. I'm practicing for when I'm a big sister. The adults exchanged glances over her head. It was something they'd discussed but hadn't made any decisions about yet. They spent the night taking shifts with Emma, cooling her fever with damp cloths, keeping her hydrated. By dawn, the fever had broken and the baby was sleeping peacefully. The storm had passed too, leaving the world crystalline white, but the roads passable. You saved us, Jessica said as Ethan prepared to drive them to the hospital for a proper checkup. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't been here. We're glad you found us, Claire said, smoothing Emma's hair. That's what this house is for, shelter from storms. After they left, Claire found Lily in her tower room looking out at the snow-covered grounds. You okay, sweetheart? I was thinking about that baby. She doesn't have a daddy, does she? Just like I didn't have a mommy for a while. How did you know that? Jessica wasn't wearing a wedding ring, and she looked scared in a way that meant she was alone. Lily's perception sometimes startled Claire. But we helped them. Like people helped us during the flood. That's right. That's what our family does. We help people. Yes, Claire said firmly. That's exactly what we do. The encounter with Jessica and Emma seemed to catalyze something. Within a week, Claire had added emergency family shelter to the foundation's services. Within a month, they'd established a program for single parents in crisis. Jessica became their first success story, helped with childcare so she could finish her degree, supported through the early struggles of single parenthood. You can't save everyone, Ethan warned gently one night when Claire was up past midnight reviewing cases. I know, but I can save some. We can save some. We already are. Spring arrived with the community center's renovation in full swing. Claire was there every day sometimes, with a hammer in her hand, sometimes with her laptop managing the foundation while sitting on scaffolding. The local news picked up the story, Billionaire ex-CEO trades boardroom for blueprints, but Claire refused all interviews. I'm not the story, she insisted. The work is the story. But Richard Blackstone apparently disagreed. He appeared one afternoon while Ethan was installing new windows and Claire was painting with a group of volunteers. This is what you left me for, he said, his voice dripping disdain, playing house and pretending to be Mother Teresa. Claire set down her paintbrush carefully. Richard, what do you want? The board wants you back. The company's hemorrhaging value under my leadership, as you probably know. I haven't been keeping track. Liar. You know everything that happens in the business world. She shrugged. Not my world anymore. It could be. Same position, better salary, full autonomy. Just come back. No. Claire, be reasonable. I am being reasonable. For the first time in my life, I'm being completely reasonable. She gestured around the half-finished center. This matters. Those kids matter. My family matters. Your stock prices don't. Your family. Richard's laugh was ugly. A contractor and his kid. You could have had anyone. I have everyone I need. Ethan had moved closer, ready to intervene, but Claire held up a hand. The company was killing me, Richard. Slowly, quietly, but killing me nonetheless. I'm alive now, really alive. And all the money in the world isn't worth giving that up. You'll regret this. The only thing I regret is not leaving sooner. She picked up her paintbrush. Now, unless you're here to volunteer, I need to get back to work. Richard left, but the encounter lingered. That night, Claire was quiet, distracted. He wasn't entirely wrong, she said finally, as they sat on the porch watching Lily catch fireflies. I could have had anyone, any life. Regrets? Ethan asked, though his voice stayed steady. God, no. She turned to him. That's what I was thinking about. How grateful I am that I ended up in that flood in that car, in that moment when you had to decide whether to save me. All those other possible lives, and I got this one. The right one. Even with the paint in your hair and the calluses on your hands. Especially with those, they're proof I'm actually living, not just existing. That summer, they took their first real vacation as a family a week at a beach house. Nothing fancy, just sun and sand and time. Lily learned to boogie board. Claire finally mastered making s'mores without setting the marshmallow on fire, and Ethan taught them both to fish. "This is perfect," Claire said one evening, watching the sunset paint the ocean gold. "No boardrooms, no board meetings, no billion-dollar deals. None of that was ever perfect. It was just noise." She leaned into him. "This is what I was looking for all along. I just didn't know it." "Mom." "Daddy," Lily called from the water's edge, holding up a perfect sand dollar. "Careful with it," Claire called back. "They're fragile." "Like everything precious," Ethan murmured. "But stronger than they look," Claire added, "if you handle them right." They returned home to find the community center nearly complete and the foundation running at full capacity. Claire had hired staff, but she remained hands-on, knowing every child's name, every family's story. One afternoon, while reviewing applications in the foundation office, Margaret Davies appeared the first time Claire had seen her since the wedding. "I wanted to see what you'd built," Margaret said, looking around the center with obvious appreciation. "Richard said you'd gone crazy, but this is remarkable." "It's just a beginning." "No, it's more than that. The company's stock has dropped 30% since you left. Morale is terrible. Richard's burned through 3 assistants already." "And you want me to care?" "No, I want you to know that what you built there, as impressive as it was, doesn't compare to what you're building here." Margaret paused. "I also wanted to tell you that I'm retiring. 40 years of corporate life is enough." "What will you do?" Margaret smiled. "I was hoping you might have a place for someone with experience in organization and management. The foundation, I mean. I'd like to help if you'll have me." Claire hugged her, surprising them both. "I'd love that. We'd love that." And so their circle expanded. Margaret brought her considerable skills to the foundation, helping it grow beyond even Claire's ambitious visions. Tom and Marcus from Ethan's crew started a vocational training program for older kids. Jessica, the young mother from the storm, began coordinating the single-parent support group. "We're building something special," Ethan said one night, looking over the center's monthly report. "Hundreds of families serve dozens of success stories." "We are," Claire agreed. Then more quietly, "I want to build something else, too." He looked up from the papers. "Another center. A baby." The words hung in the air between them. They danced around the subject since Lily's comment about being a big sister, but neither had brought it up directly. "You want to have a baby. I want to have your baby. Our baby. A little piece of you and me growing up with Lily in this house we've made a home." "Claire, I know it's complicated. I know we haven't been married long, but Ethan, I'm 36. If we're going to do this—" He kissed her, stopping the nervous flow of words. "Yes. Yes. Yes to a baby. Yes to expanding our family. Yes to whatever comes next as long as we face it together." She was crying and laughing simultaneously. "Really? Lily will be thrilled. She's been leaving not-so-subtle hints. Yesterday she asked if babies come from Amazon because you can get everything else there. What did you tell her? That some things can't be bought, only made with love. That's beautiful. That's also when she asked if we had enough love to make a baby, and I told her we had enough love to make a dozen babies. A dozen might be ambitious. Let's start with one and see how it goes." They told Lily the next morning over breakfast proper pancakes that Ethan made, while Claire managed not to burn the bacon. "We want to talk to you about something important," Ethan began. "You're having a baby," Lily said matter-of-factly, not looking up from her coloring. "How did you—" "You've been acting weird and happy. Plus, Mom's been looking at baby stuff on her computer when she thinks I'm not watching." Claire laughed. "Nothing gets past you, does it?" "Nope. So when do I get to be a big sister?" "Well, we have to make the baby first," Ethan said carefully. "So get started," Lily said with a dramatic sigh. "I'm not getting any younger." The adults dissolved into laughter, but Lily's pragmatic acceptance was exactly what they needed. The journey toward expanding their family began with hope and determination, though the path would prove more challenging than anticipated. Months passed. The The community center officially opened with a celebration that brought the whole neighborhood together. The foundation expanded to 3 more cities. The house renovation was finally officially complete, though Claire kept finding small projects to improve. But no baby came. These things take time, the doctor assured them after 6 months of trying. You're both healthy. Keep trying. Reduce stress. Reduce stress? Claire said wryly on the drive home. Has she met us? We're not stressed, Ethan protested. You're rebuilding half the neighborhood. I'm running a foundation. We're raising Lily. Okay, we're a little stressed, but it was more than stress. After a year, they started fertility treatments. Claire approached it like she'd once approached business deals, researching everything, optimizing everything, controlling what could be controlled. You can't manage your way to a baby, Ethan said gently one night, finding her surrounded by fertility books and charts. I managed my way to $1 billion company. This is different. I know. She closed the books defeated. I want this so much. For us, for Lily. I want to give you another child. You've already given me everything. If it happens, wonderful. If not, we're still complete. But Claire couldn't let it go. The treatments intensified hope, rising and falling with each cycle. Lily, perceptive as always, noticed the strain. If you can't make a baby, we could get one that needs a home, she suggested one day. Like how you needed a home after the flood, Mom. Claire and Ethan exchanged glances. Adoption. They'd discussed it briefly, but hadn't seriously considered it. Would you be okay with that? Claire asked. A baby that didn't grow in my tummy but came to us another way. Love makes a family, not tummies, Lily said with 7-year-old wisdom. You taught me that. That night they talked seriously about adoption for the first time. There are so many children who need families, Claire said. We see it every day at the foundation. It wouldn't be a consolation prize, Ethan asked. Not since we can't have our own. No, it would be choosing to love a child who needs us, like you chose to love me when I needed you. The decision once made felt right in a way the fertility treatments never had. They began the adoption process, which was its own kind of challenge: home studies, interviews, endless paperwork. It's harder than the Singapore acquisition, Claire muttered one night, surrounded by forms. But worth it, Ethan reminded her. Worth everything. 6 months into the adoption process, they got the call. A birth mother had chosen them. A teenage girl named Amy, alone and scared, had read their profile, and something had clicked. They met her at a coffee shop near the hospital. She was 17, pretty in a fragile way, with eyes that had seen too much. Tell me about your family, Amy said without preamble. So they did. Claire talked about the flood, the rescue, the unexpected love that bloomed from disaster. Ethan described their home, the foundation, the life they'd built. Lily, who'd insisted on coming, told Amy about her tower room and the koi pond and how she'd teach the baby everything about being happy. You are rich, Amy asked Claire. I still am financially, but now I'm rich in ways that matter more. And you really want this baby. It's not just charity. We want this baby like flowers want rain, Lily said seriously. That's what Daddy says about wanting things really bad. Amy smiled for the first time. I want to finish school, become a teacher. I can't do that with a baby, but I want the baby to have everything I can't give. We can help with school too, Claire offered. The foundation has programs. No. Amy was firm. I don't want to owe you. I just want to know the baby will be loved. More than loved, Ethan said. Treasured. Amy chose them. The next 2 months passed in a blur of preparation. They converted the nursery Claire had stood in that first day at the house, painting it soft yellow, filling it with carefully chosen furniture and toys. You're nesting, Ethan teased, finding Claire rearranging the nursery for the 5th time. I'm preparing. There's a difference. You've alphabetized the baby books. They needed organization. He pulled her into his arms. The baby won't care if the books are alphabetized. But I care. I need to do something. I feel so helpless. You're not helpless. You're waiting. We're waiting. Together. The call came at 3 a.m. on a Tuesday. Amy was in labor. They drove to the hospital in the pre-dawn darkness. Lily asleep in the back seat, wrapped in her favorite blanket. This is it, Claire whispered, her hand tight in Ethan's. This is it, he agreed. The baby, a boy, was born at 7:23 a.m., perfect and healthy, with a shock of dark hair and unfocused eyes that would later turn brown. Amy held him first, crying quietly, then handed him to Claire. His name is Nathan, Amy said, if that's okay, after my grandfather. Nathan? Claire repeated, tears streaming down her face. It's perfect. Nathan Cole, Ethan said, his voice thick with emotion. Lily, who'd been uncharacteristically quiet, stepped forward. Hi, Nathan. I'm your big sister. I'm going to teach you everything. Amy signed the papers 2 days later, tears but no regrets in her eyes. Take care of him, she said simply. With our lives, Claire promised. They brought Nathan home on a Thursday afternoon, the house feeling somehow more complete with his presence. That first night, as Claire rocked him in the nursery while Ethan and Lily looked on, she thought about the strange path that had brought them here. No flood, no us, she murmured to the baby. No rescue, no family. Sometimes the worst things lead to the best things. Mom, Lily said from the doorway. Can I hold him? Claire carefully transferred Nathan to his big sister's arms, Ethan supporting them both. Lily looked down at her brother with wonder. He's so small. You were smaller, Ethan told her. Really? Really? And look how perfectly you turned out. We're a real family now, Lily said. Complete. We were always real, Claire corrected gently. But yes, now we're complete. That night, after both children were asleep, Claire and Ethan stood in their bedroom looking out at the grounds where this journey had begun. Any regrets? He asked. Only one, she said. His eyebrows rose in concern. I wish I'd driven into that flood sooner. Think of all the time we could have had. He laughed, pulling her close. We have all the time in the world now. A lifetime. At least. Maybe 2 if we're lucky. I already feel lucky. Luckier than any person has a right to be. Not lucky, Ethan corrected. Choice. We chose this. Every day we choose this. And I'd choose it again. Every time. Nathan stirred in the nursery, his cry carrying through the baby monitor. They went together as they did everything now together. In the soft light of the nursery, with their son in Claire's arms and their daughter asleep down the hall, they were exactly where they belonged. The storm that had brought them together was long past, but its gifts remained: a love born from rescue, a family built from choice, a life constructed from broken pieces made beautiful. The house stood strong around them, restored and renewed shelter from all storms, testament to the power of transformation. Thank you, Claire whispered to Ethan as Nathan settled back to sleep. For what? For jumping into the flood, for pulling me out, for showing me what life could be. Thank you for being worth saving. Everyone's worth saving. But not everyone saves you back. They stood there in the nursery of their restored home, their chosen children sleeping peacefully, their unexpected love solid as the foundation beneath their feet. Outside, the world went on with its storms and floods, its disasters and miracles. But inside, in the shelter they'd built from catastrophe and courage, they had everything they needed. Nathan's first year passed in a blur of sleepless nights and small miracles. He took his first steps in the restored ballroom, chasing after Lily, who encouraged him with infinite patience. His first word was Dada, though Claire swore he'd been trying to say Mama for weeks before. The house that had once echoed with emptiness now rang with baby laughter and the constant motion of a growing family. It was during Nathan's first birthday party, a modest affair compared to Lily's elaborate celebrations, that Richard Blackstone made his final appearance in their lives. He arrived uninvited, looking haggard, older than his years. I'm not here to cause trouble, he said when Ethan met him at the door, ready to turn him away. I need to talk to Claire. Please. Claire found them on the porch, Richard looking distinctly out of place among the balloon decorations and children's laughter drifting from inside. The company's gone, Richard said without preamble. Chapter 11. The board's being investigated for fraud, nothing that traces back to your time, thank God. But it's over. Claire felt something she hadn't expected: sadness. Not for Richard, but for what the company had once represented. her youth, her ambition, her desperate need to prove herself. "I'm sorry," she said, meaning it. "Are you... You walked away at the perfect time, almost like you knew." "I didn't know. I just knew I couldn't be that person anymore." Richard looked through the window where Ethan was helping Nathan smash his first birthday cake while Lily documented everything with Claire's phone. "You really love them," he said, wonder in his voice. "With everything I have. I've been married 4 times, never felt what I see on your face right now." He straightened his expensive suit, preparing to leave. "The investigators will probably contact you about the company's practices in the last year. I'll tell them the truth, that I wasn't involved after I left. That's all I can ask." He paused at the steps. "You saved yourself, Claire. I used to think you were weak for leaving. Now I realize you were the only one strong enough to get out." After he left, Claire returned to the party, scooping Nathan up despite his cake-covered hands. He patted her face with sticky fingers, babbling happily. "Everything okay?" Ethan asked quietly. "Everything's perfect," she said, and meant it. The investigation that followed was thorough but brief for Claire. She'd kept meticulous records, and her departure had been clean. Margaret, who'd become indispensable at the foundation, helped navigate the legal requirements. Within 6 months, it was over. The company Claire had built was dissolved, its assets sold off, its legacy reduced to a cautionary tale in business journals. "Do you miss it?" Ethan asked one evening as they watched the news coverage of the final auction. "I miss who I thought I was when I ran it. The confidence, the power. But that was never real confidence. Real confidence is Nathan taking his first steps. It's Lily reading at 3 grades above her level. It's you trusting me to help with the contractor business, even though I still can't properly use a level. You're getting better with the level. Liar." But she smiled, leaning into him. "I'm exactly where I belong." The foundation, meanwhile, flourished. They opened centers in 6 more cities, each one a beacon for families in crisis. Claire insisted on visiting each one personally, bringing the children when possible. Lily had become an unofficial ambassador, telling her story to donors, explaining how a flood had brought her family together. It was at one such event, a fundraiser in Chicago, that Claire received unexpected news. A lawyer approached her during the cocktail hour, an envelope in his hand. "Miss Donovan, excuse me, Mrs. Cole. I represent the estate of Harold Ashford." The name was vaguely familiar. An old business contact, someone from the early days of her company. "Harold passed away last month. He left something for you in his will." The envelope contained a letter and a deed. Claire read aloud to Ethan later in their hotel room while the children slept in the adjoining suite. "Dear Claire," the letter began. "You won't remember me, but 20 years ago you gave a desperate young man a chance. I'd been fired from 3 jobs, had a criminal record, and no one would hire me except you. You said everyone deserved a second chance. I've watched your journey from afar, your success, your transformation, your beautiful foundation. I have no family, no one to leave my legacy to, so I leave it to you to continue the work of giving second chances." The deed was for 100 acres in Montana, with a mansion that made their estate look modest. 100 acres, Ethan breathed. What would we even do with that? Claire was already thinking planning. A retreat. For families in the foundation program. A place to heal, to bond, to find themselves again. Like we did in our house, but for others. That's a massive undertaking. Good thing I married a contractor. They flew to Montana the next month to survey the property. It was breathtaking mountains in the distance, a lake on the grounds, the house itself, a masterpiece of log cabin architecture scaled to giant proportions. "It's like our house's bigger brother," Lily observed, making them laugh. "Can we fix it up like home?" she asked. "That's the plan," Claire said. "But this time we're going to let other families help, make it theirs too." The Montana project became a family affair. They spent summers there, Ethan leading construction crews that included families from the foundation program, teaching skills, building confidence, along with walls. Claire managed the logistics while chasing after Nathan, who seemed determined to explore every dangerous corner of the construction site. "He's going to be a contractor like his daddy," Lily declared, pulling her brother away from a pile of lumber for the 5th time. "Or a CEO like his mom," Ethan countered. "Why not both?" Claire suggested. "Build companies and buildings." It took 2 years to complete the Montana retreat. By then, Nathan was 3, talking nonstop, his favorite word being why. Lily was 11, all gangly limbs and growing wisdom, already showing signs of the remarkable woman she'd become. The retreat's opening was celebrated with families from all their foundation centers, gathering for a week of healing and hope. Claire watched children who'd lost parents playing with those who'd been orphaned, saw single mothers supporting each other, witnessed the magic of shared understanding. "You did this," Ethan said, finding her crying happy tears by the lake. "We did this. None of it exists without that night, without you jumping in." "I've been thinking about that night," he said, "about what would have happened if I'd been 30 seconds later, if I'd hesitated." "But you didn't." "No, but Claire, I almost did. For just a moment, thinking of Lily, I almost drove past." She turned to him, surprised by this revelation after all these years. "What changed your mind?" "Sarah's voice, not literally, but in my memory, telling me to be brave, telling me that saving someone else might save me too." He paused. "I think she knew. Somehow I think she knew I'd need you, that Lily would need you, and that I'd need both of you." They stood by the lake, watching their children play with others, their family having grown beyond blood to encompass everyone they'd touched. The retreat was full of laughter and healing, of second chances and new beginnings. But life as they'd learned didn't follow predictable patterns. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon. Claire was in the foundation office when Margaret knocked her face grave. "There's been an accident at the Chicago Center construction site. Ethan," Claire's world tilted. "Is he? He's alive? But Claire, it's serious. A beam fell. He's in surgery." The flight to Chicago was the longest 3 hours of Claire's life. Lily held Nathan, keeping him distracted with stories, while Claire stared out the window, praying to a God she'd never been sure she believed in until now. The doctor met them at the hospital, still in surgical scrubs. "He's stable. 3 broken ribs, a punctured lung, internal bleeding we've managed to stop. But the real concern is the spinal injury. We won't know the extent until he wakes up." "When will that be?" "Could be hours, could be days. The body needs time to heal." Claire sent Lily and Nathan to stay with Margaret at a nearby hotel, then settled into Ethan's room. He looked wrong, too, still too pale. Ethan was motion and life and strength. This stillness terrified her. "You saved me," she whispered, holding his hand. "Now it's my turn. Please, Ethan, please come back to us." She talked to him for hours. About Nathan's new obsession with dinosaurs. About Lily's first crush, a boy named Marcus who played violin. About the Foundation's expansion plans, the Montana retreat's success, the life they'd built that needed him to be complete. On the second day, Lily insisted on visiting. "Daddy?" she said, simply climbing carefully onto the bed beside him. "Nathan needs you to teach him to fish. I need you to scare Marcus away. He's nice, but I'm too young for boys. And Mom needs you because she forgets to eat when you're not there to make her." Still nothing. On the third day, Claire was alone with him, exhausted, when she felt his hand twitch in hers. "Ethan." His eyes fluttered open, unfocused at first, then finding her face. "Claire." His voice was rough, barely there. "Don't try to talk. You're okay. You're going to be okay." Can't feel my legs." The words she'd been dreading. The doctor had warned this was possible. "It might be temporary, swelling. We don't know yet." "Claire." "No. Whatever you're going to say, no. We're going to get through this. Together. You jumped into a flood for me. I'm not leaving you now." The next weeks were the hardest of their lives. The feeling didn't return to Ethan's legs. The doctors talked about partial paralysis, wheelchairs, adaptation. Ethan withdrew into himself, pushing everyone away. "I'm not the man you married," he said one afternoon after another failed physical therapy session. "You're exactly the man I married, the one who saves people, who builds things, who loves his family. I can't build anymore. I can't even walk." "Then we'll adapt. We'll change. We'll do what we always do, make something beautiful from something broken. This isn't a house, Claire. This is my life." "Our life," she corrected firmly. "Our life, Ethan. For better or worse, remember." It was Nathan who broke through Ethan's depression. Their 3-year-old didn't understand why Daddy wouldn't play, why he sat in the strange chair, why he looked sad all the time. So Nathan did what 3-year-olds do. He climbed into Ethan's lap in the wheelchair and refused to move. "Daddy broken?" he asked. "Yeah, buddy, Daddy's broken." "We fix it. It's not that simple." "Fix it," Nathan insisted, patting Ethan's face with determined little hands. "Mommy says we fix broken things, make them beautiful." Ethan looked at Claire over their son's head, tears in his eyes. "Out of the mouths of babes," she said softly. The recovery wasn't linear or easy. There were setbacks and small victories, days of hope and nights of despair. But slowly, incrementally, Ethan began to adapt. He learned to navigate the wheelchair to modify his work approach. He couldn't climb scaffolding anymore, but he could design, plan, teach. "I want to start a training program," he announced one morning 6 months after the accident, "for kids aging out of foster care. Teach them construction skills, give them a trade." Claire kissed him thoroughly. "There's my husband. Welcome back." The program launched at the Chicago Center, with Ethan supervising from his chair, his crew of former foster kids hanging on every word. He couldn't demonstrate physically, but his knowledge, his patience, his understanding that everyone deserved a second chance, those were intact. Then came the morning that changed everything again. Claire woke to find Ethan's side of the bed empty. Not unusual, he often had trouble sleeping. But something felt different. She found him in the home gym they'd installed for his therapy. Actually standing between the parallel bars. "Ethan, I felt something last night, pins and needles in my toes. The doctor said it might happen nerve regeneration, but I didn't want to hope." He took a step. Shaky supported, but a step. Claire flew to him, catching him as his legs gave out, both of them, ending up on the mat, laughing and crying. "You're walking. You're going to walk again." "Maybe. The doctor says partial recovery is possible. I might always need a cane, might never climb scaffolding again, but you're walking." The recovery accelerated after that. Within a year, Ethan was mobile with a cane, occasionally using the wheelchair for long days. He returned to work modified, but determined his experience making him an even better teacher. "You're different," Tom observed, watching Ethan work with the foster kids. "Calmer, wiser, maybe." "Almost dying changes you," Ethan said simply. "Almost losing everything shows you what everything really is." They were in the Montana Retreat's main lodge when Claire made her announcement. The whole family was there for the summer, along with 20 families from the foundation program. "I'm pregnant." Ethan dropped his coffee mug. Lily squealed. Nathan looked confused. "But how?" The doctors said after the fertility treatments. "Sometimes miracles happen when you stop trying to force them." She took his hand, placed it on her still flat stomach. 10 weeks. I wanted to be sure before I told you." "A baby," Lily breathed now, 14 and even more perceptive. "A biological baby." "Does that bother you?" Claire asked anxiously. "Are you kidding? Nathan needs someone to boss around the way I boss him around. It's the circle of life." "I'm not bossy," Nathan protested. "You will be, trust me." Ethan pulled Claire close, mindful of the audience, but not caring. "A baby. Our baby." "All our babies are our babies," Claire corrected, including Lily and Nathan in her gaze. "This one's just taking a different path to get here." The pregnancy was considered high risk given Claire's age, 42, and their history. But she approached it with the same determination she brought to everything, modifying her foundation work but never stopping. "You should rest," Ethan fretted constantly. "I rested for the first 35 years of my life. Now I live." The baby, a girl, was born on a snowy December morning. The same hospital where Nathan had been born, the same doctor who treated Ethan after his accident. Full circle, Claire thought, holding their daughter for the first time. "She looks like you," Ethan said, awed. "Poor thing." Claire laughed through her tears. "What's her name?" Lily asked. She and Nathan peering at their new sister. Claire and Ethan exchanged glances. They'd discussed this for months. "Sarah," they said together. "Sarah Hope Cole." Lily's eyes filled with tears. "After Mommy." "After your mommy," Claire confirmed. "So she's always part of our family, even in name." "She would have loved this," Lily whispered, touching the baby's tiny hand. "All of this. She did love it, Ethan said. She sent us Claire, remember? You told me that once that Mommy sent Claire to us. To save us all, Lily agreed. Baby Sarah grew surrounded by love in a house that had seen resurrection in a family built from disaster and choice. She took her first steps in the same ballroom where Nathan had said her first word, why? Because Nathan had taught her well, and grew up believing that families came in all forms, and love was the only requirement. By the time Sarah was 5, the foundation had expanded internationally. The Montana retreat hosted families year-round. Ethan's construction training program had placed hundreds of young people in good-paying jobs. The ripples of that night in the flood had spread far beyond what any of them could have imagined. It was Lily home from college for Thanksgiving who put it in perspective. They were all gathered in the library, their library, where so much of their story had unfolded when she raised her glass of cider. To the flood, she said, surprising everyone. To the flood, Claire questioned. Without it, Dad never saves Mom. Mom never finds us. Nathan doesn't join our family. Sarah doesn't exist. The foundation never helps thousands of families. Sometimes the worst things that happen to us are actually the best things in disguise. To the flood, they echoed, understanding. That night, after the children were asleep, even Lily, who would always be one of their children, Claire and Ethan stood in their bedroom looking out at the grounds where their journey had begun so many years ago. Any regrets? She asked their old question. Only one. What? That we can't do it all over again. Experience it fresh. The rescue, the restoration, the falling in love. But we get to experience what comes next. Lily's graduation, her career probably, her wedding someday. Nathan growing up finding his path. Sarah's everything, all her firsts are still ahead. And us. Claire turned in his arms. We get to grow old together. In this house we rebuilt. With the family we chose and the family that chose us. We get to see the foundation's work continue, the centers multiply, the lives change. We get to wake up every morning knowing we saved each other. You make it sound so simple. It is simple. Not easy, but simple. We chose love over fear, hope over despair, together over alone. Every time. Every single time. A cry from Sarah's room interrupted them. Their youngest had been having nightmares lately, dreams of water and being lost. They went to her together, Ethan moving carefully with his cane, Claire matching his pace. Mommy, Daddy, the water was coming, Sarah whimpered. It's okay, sweetheart, Claire soothed, gathering her up. We're here. Tell me the story, Sarah demanded, about the water. So they told it again, the story their children never tired of hearing. How Daddy saved Mommy from a flood. How that rescue led to restoration not just of a house, but of lives. How families could be built from tragedy and love could grow from loss. And they lived happily ever after, Sarah asked sleepily. They lived, Ethan corrected gently, with all the mess and beauty that comes with living, which is so much better than happily ever after. Why? Sarah asked her favorite question. Because it's real, Claire answered. Because it's chosen every day. Because it's ours. Sarah settled back to sleep, secure in the knowledge that whatever waters might rise, her parents would face them together. In the quiet of the night, in the house that had sheltered so many, Claire and Ethan held each other and their daughter, grateful for floods and rescues for broken things, made beautiful for the courage to jump in when everything logical said to stay safe on shore. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The foundation faced funding issues. Nathan was struggling in school. Lily was considering a career change that would take her far from home. Ethan's mobility remained a daily battle. Claire juggled too much and rested too little. But tonight, in this moment, they had everything that mattered. Each other, their children, their purpose, their home. I love you, Claire whispered into the darkness. I love you too, Ethan replied. Thank you for being worth saving. Thank you for being brave enough to try. Outside, rain began to fall gentle this time, nourishing rather than destroying. Inside, the Cole family slept peacefully, protected by walls rebuilt with love, sheltered by a foundation stronger than any storm. The charity gala was held at their estate the following spring, the grounds transformed with tents and lights. Hundreds of people gathered to celebrate the foundation's 10th anniversary. Claire stood at the podium looking out at the crowd, donors, families they'd helped, volunteers who'd become friends. 10 years ago, she began. My husband pulled me from a sinking car. He saved my life. What he didn't know was that I would save his right back. What neither of us knew was that together we would save so many others. She talked about the foundation's work, the thousands of families served, the futures restored. But she also talked about the personal, about Lily, now working on her master's in social work, about Nathan, who'd started his own YouTube channel, teaching kids to build things, about Sarah, who at 5 had already decided she would be a doctor who fixed broken people. We don't just restore buildings, Claire concluded. We restore hope. We restore families. We restore the belief that the worst moments of our lives can become the foundations for our best. The applause was thunderous. Ethan made his way to the stage, still using his cane, but walking strongly. They stood together looking out at what they'd built from one terrible night and one desperate rescue. None of this would exist without you, Claire murmured. None of it would exist without us, he corrected. As the gala continued around them, they slipped away to the library, their sanctuary. The shelves were full now, not just of books, but of photo albums, children's artwork, memories layered like sediment. Remember when this room was empty? Claire asked. I remember when you were empty, Ethan said gently. Successful, but hollow. And you were broken. Functioning, but not living. Look at us now. They stood at the window watching their guests mingle in the gardens. Lily was talking animatedly with a young man who looked thoroughly smitten. Nathan was showing a group of kids how to fold origami. Sarah had escaped her babysitter and was dancing alone on the lawn, spinning in circles just for the joy of it. She's going to get dizzy and throw up, Claire observed. Probably. But look how happy she is right now. Worth the risk. Always worth the risk. As if to prove their point, Sarah did indeed spin too much and sat down hard on the grass. But instead of crying, she laughed, throwing her arms wide to embrace the sky. She's got your resilience, Ethan said. And your joy, Claire countered. Our miracle baby. They're all our miracles. Every child we help, every family we restore, every life we touch. The ripples just keep spreading. Margaret appeared in the doorway. They're asking for you both. Time for the dedication. They returned to find the crowd gathered around something covered by a tarp. Lily stood beside it, beaming. Mom, Dad, she said, her voice carrying across the lawn. The families wanted to do something for your anniversary. All of us who've been touched by your work, your love, your courage. Nathan pulled the tarp away, revealing a bronze sculpture. It depicted a man pulling a woman from stylized waves, but their faces were turned toward each other, hands clasped clearly, saving one another. The plaque at the base read, Sometimes we save each other. Always we choose each other. With gratitude to Ethan and Claire Cole, who taught us that love is the strongest foundation. Claire was crying, not caring who saw. Ethan's arms came around her solid and sure despite his challenges. We did this, he whispered. All of this from one moment of choice. The right choice, she whispered back. Every time. The crowd dispersed eventually. Families heading home, volunteers cleaning up. The Coles gathered in the kitchen, their kitchen where Claire still couldn't cook, but tried anyway, where Ethan had taught all their children to flip pancakes where life happened daily. I'm proud of us, Lily said suddenly. Our weird, beautiful, chosen family. We're not weird, Nathan protested. We're definitely weird, Sarah chimed in. But good weird. The best weird, Claire agreed. They talked late into the night, the 5 of them, about everything and nothing. About Lily's boyfriend, he's not my boyfriend, Nathan's college plans, Sarah's determination to learn violin. About the foundation's future, the centers they wanted to build, the lives yet to touch. Finally, children in bed, Ethan and Claire returned to their room. The house was quiet around them, full of sleeping dreams and settled love. Would you do it again? Claire asked. Jump into that flood. In a heartbeat. Would you drive into that storm again? If it led me to you every time. They held each other in the darkness, 2 people who'd saved each other in every way a person could be saved. Outside the world spun on with its tragedies and triumphs, its floods and rescues. But inside in the home they'd built from ruins, in the family they'd chosen and created, in the love they renewed daily, they had found something worth every risk, every struggle, every moment of doubt. Forever, Claire asked against his chest. Forever, Ethan confirmed. And in the house that had seen so much transformation, surrounded by children they'd raised and lives they'd changed, they fell asleep knowing that some storms were actually blessings. Some floods actually baptisms, and sometimes the very worst moment of your life was actually the beginning of everything that mattered. The bronze sculpture stood in their garden, weathering seasons, watching over the estate. Visitors often stopped to read the plaque to understand the story it represented. But the real story, the story of daily choice and ordinary courage of building beauty from brokenness. That story continued with every sunrise, every challenge met together. Every child helped, every family restored. It was in the end a love story. Not the fairy tale kind with perfect endings, but the real kind with scars and struggles and the daily decision to choose each other, save each other over and over again.